Where do you want to go? Over here?
Yeah, I do realize that it is hard for us to see our slides from this angle, so I may go down, but I don't know.
To you.
Yeah,
I mean,
okay.
Aloha, everybody. If there's anybody outside, maybe Kana, can you see? Was that Kana? I don't think it is Kana. Come on in if you're outside waiting. We'll get started here. I'm sure people will be coming and going, but we've got a full agenda with you tonight. I'm Congressman Ed Case. I represent Hawaii's 1st Congressional District, which is where we are right today. Special aloha to Moana Lua for hosting us in this really, really beautiful new Performing Arts Center. Wow. Such a special place. We have a full agenda with you tonight. Our purpose is twofold. Our purpose is, number one, to report back to you from Congress on what is going on from a Red Hill perspective, from a perspective of remediation, defueling, closure, relocating the fuel that's there now. We'll try to answer, and then the second is to hear from you, to listen to your thoughts, your concerns, and to answer your questions. And so I'm not going to give a long speech right now. I'm just going to tell you that our agenda is pretty straightforward. I am going to turn this over to my colleague and friend, Congressman Kahele, who's been a full partner with me throughout this, and he is responsible for organizing this event tonight, which I personally appreciate. He's going to give you a rundown of what he's up to, and then I'm going to give you a rundown on what I'm up to, and then our friend and leader Ernie Lau is going to give you a rundown on what he's up to, and then we're going to turn it over to you. And so that's it in a nutshell. And with that, I want to welcome to the 1st Congressional District my colleague Congressman Kahele.
All right, mahalo, Congressman Case. Aloha, ahi ahi kako. Thank you all for coming out tonight. We really appreciate the Board of Water Supply Chief Engineer Ernie Lau joining us. We also have representatives from the U.S. Pacific Fleet here tonight that can also answer some questions as well. But just like Congressman Case said, and for most people in the general public, Congress can be confusing. And we're going to break it down for you real simple and explain to you where we are right now in the defueling, shutdown, and the permanent closure of the Red Hill Bulk Fuel Storage Facility. Congressman Case, along with Senator Schatz, sit on the respective Appropriations Committee in the U.S. House and the U.S. Senate. Senator Hirono and myself sit on our respective Armed Services Committees in the U.S. House and the U.S. Senate. Last week, the Senate Armed Services Committee convened a hearing on the National Defense Authorization Act for FY23, and they provided a $1.1 billion provision for Red Hill. The House Armed Services Committee convenes on Wednesday in 2 days. Both Congressman Case and I are on all-night red-eye flights tonight, going back to Washington, D.C. The House Armed Services Committee, which I am a member of, will meet on Wednesday for at least, if not an 18 to 24-hour marathon hearing. And in that bill is what I'm going to explain to you tonight, what's in that bill right now, and some of the things that I think are good for Hawaii and the shutdown of Red Hill, and some things that I think are problematic. But last week, Congressman Case and the Appropriations Committee passed a $1 billion spending provision for Red Hill. And so you can't have one or the other. You need the authorizers, the House and Senate Armed Services Committee, to authorize the shutdown of Red Hill, fund its funding, providing language to do that, and then you need the appropriators to actually put money to the authorization. So all four of us work together to accomplish what we believe is absolutely necessary and critical, and that is to shut down this facility permanently. We are going to, we have about 25, 28 slides that both of our staffs put together so that you can clearly understand where we are in Congress right now while our HASC and Appropriations Committees are meeting to work out how we shut down this facility. So our plan tonight is, we did introductions. I'm going to run through my presentation. Congressman Case will run through his presentation. We're going to let Ernie Lau from the Board of Water Supply speak to what he sees here, because we value his input tremendously, and also he can speak to the $195 million request that the Board of Water Supply has currently right now to fund additional wells for the Red Hill and the associated area. And then we're here for you, Q&A, and we decided to allocate over 2 hours to each of you that want to let us know, is this hitting the mark, is it not? Are there things we need to fight for in Washington, D.C., or not? If you have anything that is on your mind, we want to hear it tonight, so that we can go back to D.C. and fight for all of you and advocate for its shutdown. So I'm going to jump right in, if I can get this to work. Okay, let's lay the groundwork on the timeline and how we got here. Last May, on May 6th, there was an incident that has been believed to be operator error that caused a pipe or a line up near tanks 19 at 20 at the upper edge of the fuel farm to release 19,000 gallons of fuel into the upper section of the lower adit, I guess you could say, in Red Hill. That water-fuel mixture that was cleaned up, there was an undetermined amount, estimated to be about 19,000 gallons of fuel, that leaked, and some portion of fuel got into a fire suppression system that nobody knew was there between May and November. In November, an operator in the lower adit tunnel struck a PVC fire suppression line that caused the release of approximately 14,000 gallons of fuel and water mixture that was released into the lower adit of the lower section of the tank farm, very, very close to the Red Hill well. That fuel that started to leak on Saturday night, November 20th, was secured by early Monday morning on what would have been November 22nd. But the amount of fuel and the amount of water that leached into the soil made its way into the Red Hill well and eventually contaminated that Red Hill shaft and associated well, and began to creep into the Navy's water system. Because we know that between November 22nd, Thursday was Thanksgiving, that post-Thanksgiving weekend, that there were reports from military families all over the Navy's water system that were experiencing adverse health effects and unexplained things that were happening to them because they were consuming and bathing in and utilizing water on the Navy's water system that was contaminated with fuel. On Sunday night, November 28th, in the evening, the Navy makes the decision, the commander of Joint Base Pearl Harbor Hickam and the Navy makes a decision to remove the Red Hill well from the Navy's water system, because there is a high suspicion by that evening, by that Sunday night, that there is fuel in the Red Hill well and subsequently in the Navy's water system. By November 29th, in the evening, the Department of Health issued a water advisory to all users of the Navy's water system, from Kapolei and Kapolei to Aliamanu, to stop using or consuming the water. And this triggers a sequence of events. By December 6th, the Department of Health issues an emergency order to cease Red Hill operations and empty the tanks. It would take about 2 weeks for the Navy to order that no fuel be moved to or from tanks 1 through 20. Not all tanks have fuel in them. There are some tanks that have no fuel in them, tanks 1 and 19, but they order that there would be no fuel transfers between any tanks at Red Hill. On February 11th, Congressman Case and I, along with Senator Schatz in the U.S. Senate, introduced the Red Hill Vi Act that calls for a series of provisions, but ultimately calls for the Red Hill bulk fuel storage facility to be shut down. On March 7th, the Secretary of Defense, Lloyd Austin, at the Pentagon, calls for the permanent closure and defueling of Red Hill. On May 6th, the Department of Health issues their second emergency order. And finally, on May 27th, the Navy releases their third-party assessment of the Red Hill fuel storage facility that had begun back in January. So this independent third party releases their report It is a redacted report, but it outlines what critical infrastructure upgrades need to be done to Red Hill and the timeline of which they should be done in to render this facility safe for defueling. I can brief this slide real quick. The U.S. House Armed Services Committee is the committee of jurisdiction that every year crafts the National Defense Authorization Act. It is a bill that can be in the hundreds of billions of dollars, and for 61 years, Congress has fulfilled its constitutional obligation by passing an annual National Defense Authorization Act. I sit on two key subcommittees on the House Armed Services Committee. I sit on the Tactical Air Land Committee and the Readiness Committee. The Red Hill Bulk Fuel Storage Facility, its purview falls directly under military readiness. And so the subcommittee that I'm on, along with a couple other subcommittees, have purview and jurisdiction over Red Hill. For some background, in the FY22 NDAA, which President Biden signed into law last December, Congressman Case and I made sure that there was a provision in this bill that called for the inspection of piping and support infrastructure at the Red Hill Bulk Fuel Storage Facility. We got this provision into the FY22 NDAA before we even knew what happened on Red Hill. Because when we negotiated this back in the summer, the Red Hill situation hadn't happened yet. So it just so happened that we had this language in the FY22 NDAA that the president signed into law. Now, once, of course, November 20th happened, we all remember December and January and February. Our appropriators, Senator Schatz and Congressman Case, are able to get $403 million into a continuing resolution as the budget was being, or the government was being continued to be funded under a CR. And they got in $403 million to address Red Hill while we were dealing with this situation real time. Finally, when the FY22 appropriations budget is finally passed, in that omnibus bill, this was passed on March 15, 2022, it included $728.5 billion in discretionary spending for defense, of which there was $686 million for Red Hill. So again, just to clarify, the NDAA is the authorizers, but we couldn't do anything without the appropriators. The appropriators finally came to agreement on March 15th. It passed, President signed it into law, and in addition to the $403 million that was funded in the CR, $686 million was funded in the FY22 appropriations bill. So we've already put over $1 billion to Red Hill. It's a lot of money. In the FY23 presidential budget, so now President Biden sends his budget to the US Congress this past December, and in his FY23 budget, the president requests $1 billion for the Red Hill Recovery Fund. This is to enable the Department of Defense to quickly and flexibly address the health, environment, and national security needs of the Hawaii community and the department. And so this is what the president asked Congress we need to shut down Red Hill, complying and agreeing with Secretary of Defense Austin's order, $1 billion. It doesn't specify how that money should be spent, but it does ask for $1 billion. This is the House NDA overview. So the president released his budget in March of 2022, $1 billion for Red Hill. In April of 2022, I submit my National Defense Authorization request to the House Armed Services Committee. Just last week, Chairman Adam Smith, the chairman of the House Armed Services Committee, released the first draft of the NDAA, and we are marking up the chairman's mark this Wednesday, June 22nd. We expect the National Defense Authorization Act to pass the House Armed Services Committee this week and go to the floor of the U.S. House for passage at the end of the July period. Once the House passes the NDAA, it gets conferenced with the Senate version, the $1.1 billion that Senator Hirono was part of. The respective House and Senate Armed Services Committee chairs and their respective ranking members, all four of them meet to decide what the final bill will look like. That bill will then be passed by the U.S. Congress. and signed into law by the President. My top priorities for the FY23 NDAA is to advocate for robust federal resources to address the safe defueling of Red Hill, is to put pressure on the Navy to defuel and permanently close Red Hill in an expeditious manner, and to reimburse the Board of Water Supply for its Red Hill-related expenses, amongst other things. Now, to achieve these priorities in the FY23 NDAA, it includes two things: budgetary provisions and legislative provisions, and I'm going to show you what's in them right now. So when the House Armed Services Committee released the chairman's mark last week, this is what is in the House Armed Services bill that we are debating on Wednesday. One of the things that is dramatically different in the HASC bill than the SASC bill is that it's only $800 million. The President asked for $1 billion. The Senate Armed Services Committee passed $1.1 billion, but the House Armed Services Committee, in its initial first pass, is only allocating $800 million to Red Hill. $500 million of that will go to this, the Navy's Environmental Restoration and Red Hill account, to be used for these funds. Now, one of the things that is important is our state and county agencies, the Board of Water Supply, the Department of Health, the Department of Education, expended a lot of money to get us through Red Hill. This $500 million doesn't automatically reimburse those state and city and county of Honolulu agencies. They only get money if the Navy doesn't expend all of the $500 million. And then if there is money left over, at the end of the year, it is transferred into this Office of Secretary of Defense, Defense Environmental Restoration account, which can then reimburse the Board of Water Supply, the Department of Health, the Department of Education for response costs. The second budgetary provision is $100 million for sustainment, restoration, and modernization and facilities sustainment of Red Hill. This $100 million is to essentially shore up the facilities and ensure that the pipelines and infrastructure are safe to use. The SGH Independent Assessment Report, which I will show you, called for 200 recommendations to be done, called for 43 absolutely critical items that must be done before we begin to defuel Red Hill. This $100 million can go to those necessary infrastructure upgrades that must be done before we move any fuel out of the facility. So we're up to $600 million now. Here's another $100 million. That goes to the administration and service-wide activities for Red Hill's distribution, advanced planning, and engineering program support. This is planning and design for the United States Navy and Indo-PACOM to look at how they're going to take the fuel from Red Hill and potentially distribute that fuel, plan how to distribute that fuel, the required engineering to do that across Indo-PACOM. Then there's $75 million for MILCON, and then there's $23.184 million for unspecified MILCON. And that total is $798 million. That's in the House Armed Services bill that we will be taking up on Wednesday. Now we have legislative priorities. So that was the budget. This is the legislative side. These are the exact snapshots of what's in the bill right now. One of the things that is in this bill is the Congress is calling for the shutdown of Red Hill, the defueling of Red Hill, to commence no later than December 31st of 2023. It does provide the SecDef the opportunity to extend that for 6 months and give it waiver authority. And that's something that needs to be addressed. But one of the things that I find problematic in this bill is this language section that starts in the second paragraph. And I don't know if I have a highlighter on this thing. But where you see after December 31st, 2023, it says this section, which is section 331, would require that prior to defueling, the Secretary of Defense certify to the Congressional Defense Committees that defueling will not adversely impact the Department of Defense ability to provide fuel operations within the Indo-Pacific. What does this mean? This means that the Department of Defense, through the Pentagon, must convey to the United States Congress and the respective military committees that it can and it has a plan to distribute the potentially up to 250 million gallons of fuel that Red Hill can hold throughout Indo-PACOM. and it prevents them from shutting it down and executing this 12/31/2023 provision if they cannot demonstrate that. And that's something that I think and I find problematic in this section of the language. In section 332, it would prevent any funds from being used to permanently close a facility until 1 year after the SecDef certifies that a fuel capacity equivalent to the capacity provided by the Red Hill facility has been added to U.S. Indo-PACOM Command. What does this mean? This means that the Navy wouldn't be able to use funds within the FY23 unless the SecDef certifies that distribution plan of where that fuel needs to go throughout Indo-PACOM. Section 333 is placement of sentinel or monitoring wells in proximity to Red Hill. So this provision requires the DoD, working with the USGS, to determine and report on the need, number, and optimal locations for additional sentinel or monitoring wells near Red Hill. What is a sentinel well? A sentinel well, you have Red Hill, and they're putting all of these straws around Red Hill. They're drilling wells down so that they can see and detect any movement of potential fuel plume in the system or in the associated area. And so these are what sentinel wells are. Section 334 is to report on the DoD's efforts to track health implications of fuel leaks at Red Hill. And so this section would require the DoD, through the SecDef, to address those health implications from the Red Hill facility for members of the armed forces and their dependents. Why is that problematic? Because it's not just the military's armed forces and their dependents, it's all of us, the civilian community of the island of Oahu that could have been affected by Red Hill. So that's something that I think is problematic and needs to be addressed. And I've offered an amendment on this bill to change this. Section 335 is additional water needs of the armed forces on Oahu. Again, water needs of the armed forces on Oahu. What about the entire island of Oahu? So this is something else that I also find problematic. Section 336 is to study and fund federal funded research and development, working with associated stakeholders, which would look at possible future Department of Defense uses for Red Hill. One of the things they're not sure of is what to do at Red Hill. Once we defuel the facility, do you mothball it? Do you fill it up? Do you take everything out? How do you secure it so we don't have future generations going in there and breaking into the facility? This is something that has to be addressed as well. So what is the long-term uses, or what are the alternative uses for Red Hill? And what does that mean? So now that was the bill, the budgetary provisions and the legislative provisions. These are the amendments that I have personally submitted to the House committee that I will be debating on and working to get into the House bill on Wednesday. So the first thing is we need to get that up to $1 billion. We need to match what the president asked for and at least match what the Congressman Case in the Appropriations Committee did. And on the Senate Armed Services side, they had $1.1 billion in there. Now, how would what I'm trying to do is justify to the House committee is a request from the Board of Water Supply for $195 million, and Ernie will talk about that when he comes up, to look at drilling and completing other wells in the area that can provide water to the island of Oahu. Because Ernie will speak to this, but if I'm not mistaken, we have not brought the Halava shaft or the Halava well back onto the Board of Water Supply system. And Ernie, you can address that when you come up. Another thing I'd like to do is to expand Section 335 so it covers all residents of the island of Oahu, not just members of the armed forces. And the third thing I want to do is I want to fence 25% minimum of the funding for the Office of the Secretary of Navy until it takes action on the recommended infrastructure upgrades provided by that independent third-party assessment. So if the Navy doesn't get their studies done in a timely manner, it doesn't make the necessary infrastructure upgrades that they need to make as quick as possible, then we're going to prohibit them from drawing down at least 25% of the funding that is provided. The Simpson SGH repair recommendations, this is an independent assessment that was done. They did a very, very thorough assessment. It is released in a redacted form to the general public, but it's still pretty comprehensive. They did a good job, and they didn't just look at the Red Hill Bulk Fuel Storage Facility. They looked at everything. Everything that is associated with this facility, down to the piers that are in the Pearl Harbor area, everything that needs to be done. And they categorized in their report over 200 recommendations, 43 of which are absolutely critical for defueling. Some of them are high priority, some are low priority, some are just maintenance. But it includes both specific repairs and items for further evaluation and assessment. These are some of the recommendations for defueling in the evaluation and assessment phase. I won't read all of them, but our staff broke them down for you so you can see, of those 43 items, these are things that absolutely must be done before we can defuel the facility safely. Moving fuel down to Pearl Harbor or Hickam, or potentially moving fuel back out to Campbell Industrial Park to be held near Par, Hawaii. Within their repair and recommendations, these are items. Now, some of these are already under contract. Some of these are not under contract yet. These are the fire protection recommendations that need to be done. These are the structural pipeline repairs that need to be done. And in a nutshell, after reading the report, it was apparent to me that unless it was absolutely catastrophic and we needed to quickly defuel those tanks back in December and January, had we done so without doing this independent assessment report and without making these critical infrastructure upgrades or operator procedures that needed to be addressed, that could have made the problem much, much worse. If we had rapidly defueled the tanks, moved it out to Par, Hawaii, we need to do these things before that occurs. Part of the May 6th incident was surge prevention because of the operator's inability to follow checklists, to move valves in the appropriate order. And so preventing surges that, as an example, happened on May 6th is going to be critical as well before we can start defueling. Surge resiliency. Now, operations and training. Some of it is not just infrastructure. Some of it is the actual operations of the facility. The checklist, the challenge and response of the operators in that facility. Before they move a switch, they've read their checklist. They've confirmed what they're going to do, and an independent person with them confirms that that's the appropriate action before moving a switch or moving a valve, which didn't happen on May 6th, which is what caused the surge that caused the May 6th incident. So part of this is a process, hazard, and analysis for recommendations for defueling. Okay, Congressman Case is going to come up next. How long do I think in really looking at this is going to take? Once the Navy releases their report, and they're supposed to release it at the end of the month, they will then sit down with the Department of Health and the Department of Health Director, Libby Char, and her team. The Navy and the Department of Health will look at the 200 recommendations that were made, the 43 critical infrastructure upgrades and need to be done, and they will decide which ones we got to do and how long they're going to take to complete those items. Some things take longer than others, and if you wait, there's risk in waiting. So they're going to have to come to agreement on what needs to be done. And per their emergency order, there's supposed to be a plan in place by November of this year of what we need to do and what is the agreed upon things to put into place to safely defuel. At that point, it's going to take about another 6 months to actually procure those contracts and put out those contracts. Then it could potentially take another year to actually finish all of those things. And so the likelihood of commencing defueling by December 31st, 2023 is a little aggressive. It is more likely that it can be done by the fall of 2024. But I'm just speculating after reading the report. That will come down to the Navy and the Department of Health sitting down and figuring out how we're going to get this done. But to look at a level of time, that's what we're looking at. Now, the one question I would have is the 100+ million gallons of fuel currently sitting in about a dozen tanks up there right now that hasn't moved since the 20th of December, is it safe? Are those tanks structurally sound? Are they not leaking? And can we guarantee that those tanks can stay that way for the next year and a half, potentially, almost 2 years, before we actually commence defueling? And with that, I'm going to hand it over to Congressman Case.
I'll come over here in the spotlight. Aloha again. Congressman Ed Case again, 1st Congressional District from Makapu'u to Mililani to Ko'olina, so that's my district. Really appreciate, again, the partnership of Congressman Kahele. And speaking of partners, I do want to say, before I start into my talk, is that we have had, you can't do this without partners. We have had great partners in the state and county government, of course, the community. We've got a couple of our state and county legislators here. I think I saw Council Member Radiant Cordero. Are you still here, Council Member? There you are. Thank you so much for joining us. And I think I saw State Rep Linda Ichiyama. Linda, are you here? Thank you so much, Linda. I saw former Council Member Ikaika Anderson, who was right over there. Thank you, Ikaika. And did I forget anybody else that we... Oh, okay, Senator Favela is here. Thank you so much. There you are. Thank you, Kurt, for being here. As well, I would say that there are two critical committees in Congress, two on the House side, two on the Senate side. We have the House Armed Services Committee, the Senate Armed Services Committee, the House Appropriations Committee, the Senate Appropriations Committee. Congressman Kahele is on the House Armed Services Committee, and that's what he's been talking to. I am on the Appropriations Committee. I'll get into that. But we have two great colleagues on the other side of Capitol Hill, and that is Senator Hirono on Senate Armed Services and Senator Schatz on Senate Appropriations. So we've got this covered 4 ways, and we ought to be able to muster that collective firepower to get this done. So what I'm going to do is I'm actually going to say some of the same things that Kai did. Hopefully that will be in my own words and reinforcing of what he said. But at the end of the day, I hope you will understand what we're up to. So I'm going to cover, of course, the federal funding, which is my kuleana on appropriations, my particular kuleana, remediation, defueling, and closure. And here are my topics. I'm going to just spend a little bit of time to tell you what appropriations actually means, because I think that is important for you to understand. I'll talk about what our goals are on Red Hill, our collective goals. I'm going to go back over the governing agreements, orders, and reports that are molding the actions that we are taking. I'm going to talk about the fiscal year 2022 federal funding for Red Hill. This is the current fiscal year. And I'm going to talk about fiscal year 2023 federal funding for Red Hill. And I do apologize, in the question and answer session, I'll probably have to go slightly early if we're going long, because I do actually have to get on a plane and go back for the appropriations meetings this week. Okay, appropriations overview, appropriations 101, what it is, what it isn't, our committees and subcommittees, our process. Again, where does this fit in? I already did all that. Didn't switch over. Okay, Appropriations 101. So all federal spending every year is split into what we call mandatory federal spending and discretionary federal spending. Mandatory federal spending happens whether Congress does anything about it or not. The only reason it doesn't happen is because Congress affirmatively says not to do it. So, for example, if you're on Social Security, you get your Social Security checks. It happens automatically. We don't have to redo it every single year. If you're getting your veterans benefits, Medicare, et cetera, these are mandatory. They're locked in. They're going to happen. But the real year-to-year funding of our federal government is our discretionary spending, and that is what we're talking about here. This is money that is available for the entirety of federal government to spend, and our appropriations committees on the House and the Senate side decide how we split that up and where it goes and under what conditions. So that's number one, discretionary spending, and that is $1.5 trillion per year, $1.5 trillion per year. By the way, all of the COVID emergency assistance, which totaled $5 to $6 trillion over the last 2.5 years, was also discretionary spending that we appropriated out of our committees. Our federal fiscal year starts October 1st. That's our magic year. So we are now in FY 2022, which started October 1st last year, ends September 30th of this year, and we are now working on FY 2023, so the one that starts this October 1st. We have to start the spending in the House. That's just what our Constitution says. It says the House starts it, and then the Senate takes over. And I've already said this, our spending bills are authored and advanced by our respective appropriations committees. So, what is it not? Appropriations. Well, first of all, the authority for these programs is done elsewhere in Congress. So Congress will create, for example, pass a law that comes out of another committee, the Native Hawaiian Education Act, for example. But the Appropriations Committee funds it. So you need to work with your authorizing committee and your appropriations committees, and that's where Congressman Kahele and I have worked on Red Hill. He has the authorizing side, the actual law, the actual direction. I have the funding side. And we've got to be synced up, because if we're not synced up, both him and me, or us and Hirono and Schatz, it doesn't work. And luckily, we have all been synced up. Generally, our appropriations process goes year to year. We don't fund over multi-years. However, in this case, we look like we have succeeded in getting some assurances of multi-year funding, which is the exception rather than the rule. This is just a quick rundown. We split up all of the appropriations into 12 subcommittees, and these are the subcommittees. We've got one for agriculture, we've got one for interior and the environment, and you can see in bold the defense subcommittee, which is the largest of our subcommittees, taking up about half of the $1.5 trillion. And then military construction, veterans affairs, and related has all of our military construction, as it implies, all of our veterans affairs. I'm a member of the Military Construction and Veterans Affairs Subcommittee, and I work every single day with the Defense Appropriations Subcommittee as well in various ways, but especially on Red Hill. I'm not going to go into this in depth, but like the slide Kai showed you earlier, it's just to give you some sense that we have to go through a certain process with federal funding. It starts with the President submitting a budget request. The President submitted a budget request for $1 billion in the next upcoming fiscal year, so that was great. That didn't just happen. He didn't just invent that. We were working with him even before he submitted that request to make sure that his budget had a significant amount for Red Hill in it, and the administration, to its credit, understood the need to come out of the box with a very, very strong appropriations request. Nothing worse in this situation than the president comes out with zero and then you've got an uphill battle. Right now, it's the president is there and we are there too. We've just got to get it done. We're over in step 6 right now, which is the bottom, the middle right. The House Appropriations Committee reviews and passes each of the 12 bills, and that is what we are doing this week. So I fly back, I get back on Tuesday. On Wednesday, we have our defense bill, and on Thursday, I have my military construction bill, which I'll get into. Okay, that's Approps 101. Now, what are we trying to accomplish with Red Hill? No surprises here, but I thought it was important for us to just make sure that it's down in one place so that we can talk it through. First of all, of course, we are still very concerned about our impacted families and communities who definitely still have health concerns, the possibility of long-term health consequences, and that has clearly been our number one goal, really from the beginning of the current crisis, was to take care of our primarily but not exclusively military families and others. For example, the schools that serve those military communities are our public schools like Red Hill Elementary. Number 2, remediation and cleanup. Is it leaking still? How do we get that out of the aquifer? How do we prevent the aquifer from further harm? How do we determine what is still going on and what do we do about it? Number 3, defueling, which is clearly our immediate goal, which is to commence as soon as we can the defueling of Red Hill. Number 4, close Red Hill. And let's not forget number 5, because the fuel in Red Hill needs to go somewhere. The military does have a plan to take that fuel somewhere. But also, the reality is that Red Hill is our nation's #1 premier Indo-Pacific fuel storage capacity facility. And so you cannot simply close it without contemplating how you're going to provide for fuel storage capacity beyond the closure of Red Hill. And in fact, our military is doing that, has a plan. We've been working with them, and part of the appropriations process is to make sure that they can have that next step of fuel storage capacity, just not at Red Hill. Okay, agreements, orders, and reports. Kai went over this, but I think it's important again because these are the agreements, orders, and reports that are charting our path, are determining our course as we go. Number 1, of course, the State of Hawaii emergency order. The State of Hawaii came in right away and made certain orders that it directed the military to achieve, to move towards closure. That was in December. They came back a couple of months later and revised the State of Hawaii's emergency order. Let's remember that Red Hill is subject to the State of Hawaii's jurisdiction. It is subject to state law, and the State of Hawaii is determining by its permits, by its permissions, the direction of Red Hill. So the Navy is not doing this on its own. It cannot. The State of Hawaii is actually running the show, and their emergency order, the last one that was amended, was not appealed by the military, so it is binding on the military right now, and that's the one that's operative on us right now. Number 2, of course, the Secretary of Defense, after a lot of urging, after our introduction of the Y Act and other actions, the Secretary of Defense ordered Red Hill to be closed. Number 3, the independent consultant report, which was part of the State of Hawaii's emergency order, was you, Navy, must go and get an independent consultant to review Red Hill and come back and tell us all how do we actually achieve our plan safely, expeditiously, and in a way that is going to be based on the science, based on the realities of the situation. And that is the 880-page report that came out at the end of last month. And that report, as Kaya has already outlined, came up with 200 some odd recommendations. Many of them were on the infrastructure side of things. So, you've got to fix the pipelines before you move fuel through them. You've got to check the rivets and check the joints and the expansion joints, et cetera, et cetera. But also, and this is important, also you must make sure that the personnel that are going to continue to operate Red Hill during the defueling are fully trained and are fully capable of doing this. So you've got really 2 aspects to this. You've got the human aspect and you've got the infrastructure aspect. Number 4, Navy plan for defueling and closure. Again, required by the State of Hawaii's emergency order. Navy, once we get the independent consultant's report back, you must come back to us and tell us how you are going to defuel and close. Exactly how are you going to do it based on the independent consultant's report? That is due June 30th, so that's a big date for all of us in just 10 days. I expect that they actually will produce that report by June 30th, and we will all be looking for it. And then finally, as Kai also summarized, just because the Navy comes up with a plan doesn't mean we're POW. The State of Hawaii must approve that plan. So where we are right now is, aside from what we're doing in Congress, is that the Navy plan has to come in by the end of this month, and the State of Hawaii has to take a look at that plan compared to the independent consultant report. I presume go back to the community to open it up for community consideration as well, which it should, and they then approve the actual plan, which may or may not adopt all of those 200 recommendations. But I'm sure will be focused on the safety of the defuel, because that's our concern, and has been since the get-go. Okay, if we are going to defuel this, is it safe to defuel it? Are we going to worsen the situation by defueling it? Because we all know that the primary crisis of the last year occurred because fuel was being moved back and forth, or at least it was in the pipes. And so we've got to make sure of that. So those are the orders that are in front of us right now. Okay, so how are we going to pay for all of this? That's the question. That's where I enter into this. Well, first of all, in FY 2022, the current fiscal year, and this was after all of the regular work had been done in our Appropriations Committee. That's when the Red Hill crisis really kicked in November. We were already into the current fiscal year. We were already well into, all of the bills had passed, for the most part, had passed the U.S. House. And we came back for emergency funding. Emergency funding. That funding was primarily related to Ukraine, but one project was in that emergency funding, one specific project, and that was Red Hill. And that was a lot of effort by your congressional delegation to try to make sure that that happened. We got it into a bill that continued federal funding. We just wanted to support the ongoing efforts by the Navy to address the drinking water contamination. We clearly wanted to implement the emergency order, and there were some unprogrammed funds that we found and could reprogram over to Red Hill. So that was the first $400 million. We came back in March when we finished the appropriations bills and added another $736 million. 686 you can see there to take care of our displaced and harmed communities, address the drinking water contamination, and conduct the other activities in compliance with the state's order. It also included $50 million to advance future water treatment distribution projects. Now, these provisions were pretty broad because we didn't know exactly what we needed to do and when and how. And by we, I'm just saying collectively. It was really the Navy in conjunction with the state of Hawaii and others that were charting this course. But the point I'm trying to make is this money is still being expended. There's a fair bit of discretion in it, and that's where we're going to try to get some of our state and county expenses reimbursed from, if we can pull that off. So that's FY 2022 right now. FY 2023, starting October 1st of this year. Remember, the president asked for another $1 billion in FY 2023, and that bill is now moving through the House this week in defense and military construction in my Appropriations Committee. And the drafts of those bills have already been dropped. In fact, they've already been approved by the subcommittees themselves. So my military construction subcommittee approved our part of it just about 5 or 6 days ago. Defense, likewise, right about now. So we've already passed the first stage. But bottom line, $1 billion from the defense bill to match the president's budget. It is fairly broad right now, again, because we don't know exactly what the plan that is approved by the state is going to say. It's obviously supposed to continue to take care of our communities and take whatever other actions are necessary. The Milcon VA program is about future water treatment projects and fuel distribution facilities, so hardcore infrastructure to help us out with water treatment. This last line is a critical one here. These amounts, current best estimate of the work that is going to be needed for potential future construction projects. This is a fluid situation, but the fact that we have $1.1 billion, another $1.1 billion is good news, and I have no doubt that at the end of the day, that $1.1 billion in addition to the other $1.1 billion is going to be needed in these 2 fiscal years and beyond. Some of this money, by the way, can be spent in future fiscal years. Okay, so what's next? I've already covered this. FY 2023 funding bills will be considered by the full House Committee on Appropriations. Later this month means this week. And then we are going to take those bills and pass them out of the House, the full House, by the end of July. We want these monies to be available starting October 1st. In recent years, our bills have slipped past the beginning of the fiscal year. And so what we have to do is to continue the funding into the next fiscal year. We're pretty comfortable that the $1.1 billion will carry us from FY 2022, will carry us into that next year. And then finally, that I already said the third bullet there. Let's see. Okay, that is that. Now, I want to say one thing that Kai said here, and I think it's important for us to all just be, straight about what's going on and come into this with eyes wide open. The independent consultant's report that came out with 200 recommendations in it, most of which, all of which had some basis for the consultant to put them in. It may be at the end of the day that some of those are not necessary right now, but it is likely that most of them will be necessary in some way, shape, or form. And so if you just take your time frame and think about this, you think, okay, fine, the Navy has to come out with its plan, and then the state of Hawaii has to approve that plan. Meanwhile, we're going to be working on the money, but the state of Hawaii has to approve that plan. I don't know how long it's going to take the state of Hawaii to evaluate. This is a critical plan for the state to approve. And then, once the state of Hawaii approves it, I believe the money will be there. The plan is implemented. Some of it can be parallel track, so you can fix the infrastructure while you're making sure that your personnel are capable of moving that fuel. But some of it has to be sequential. I mean, you can't do everything at the same time. And so the reality is, as Kai said, that we are not going to be able safely or responsibly to defuel in the time frame that a couple of months ago we were hoping for. So, we were hoping that maybe it would be fairly straightforward. We could defuel and, we'd get a quick check on the safety and defuel in a 3 to 6 month, maybe a little bit longer period. But it doesn't look like that's going to happen. Now, what Kai is working on is a defuel requirement by the end of 2023 with this discretion to the Secretary of Defense. I don't know what the date's going to be. I want to get it done as fast as anybody else, but I want to get it done safely. And so we've got a lot of safety concerns and issues to sort through, and we have to do this right. And so that's the reality of the timing of the defuel. Now, obviously, once we defuel it, the fuel is out of there. The closure is, I don't think at least, going to be quite as critical from a time perspective because the fuel's not there. It's not an immediate risk, the fuel in it at least. And then finally, the fact is that during this time, the military will be trying to find alternate sources of fuel to satisfy their fuel storage capacity. So that's not going to be an issue. So I think that that's what the time frame is going to be. Okay, that's it for my part of it. Do you want to? I will now introduce the Chief Engineer of the Honolulu Board of Water Supply, and somebody that I think each and all of us have come to respect greatly. Of course, his concerns on Red Hill predated these leaks, but he's going to tell you what's on his mind, and that's Ernie Lau. So Ernie, take it away.
Well, thank you, everybody. I'm so embarrassed. You can see how complex the federal process is here. And, just last week, I reached out to both Congressman Kahele and Congressman Case and asked I need their help. I need to figure out how we can get funds to help make the Board of Water Supply and its water customers whole. And what we estimate right now, the development of new wells, and I just want to introduce my staff in the audience. Mr. Erwin Kawata there, head of our Water Quality Division. And Ms. Kathleen Elliott Pahinui, head of my Communications Office. So even though Erwin is a chemist by training and head of our Water Quality Division, I tasked him to find new wells to replace the wells that are shut down currently. We still have 3 wells shut down, Halava Shaft, Halava Wells, and Aiea Wells. And they're shut down as a precaution because we don't know how far contamination in the underground aquifer might be traveling into the valley. From the Department of Health's maps, we see that it's kind of spread westward into the industrial park area, like where the prison is located. But we don't know how it's moving maybe across the valley. So as a precaution and to avoid putting all of you at risk of fuel-contaminated water being pumped into our water system inadvertently, like it happened last year at Joint Base Pearl Harbor Hickam, unfortunately, we choose to keep them shut down. While we're doing that, we're not going to wait until we know the nature and extent of the contamination, that more investigation's been done. We're going to proceed to look for new wells. Just in case we cannot turn those 3 wells online, we need to replace that capacity for our community, for our future. So Irwin is busy looking for replacement well locations. We've identified 5 or 6 locations. He's also looking for the Board of Water Supply to proceed to help in the investigation of the nature and extent of the contamination of the aquifer in Halawa Valley. So we've already awarded a contract to a driller to drill a sentinel monitor well in the valley, and Irwin is looking for more locations to proceed to do that because time is of the essence. I can appreciate our congressional delegation. You saw the points they pointed out here, how complex the process is in Congress. And I'll tell you, Ernie Lau, Board of Water Supply, I've only worked for city and state government, and this goes way beyond my understanding of how this gets done. So I really want to say mahalo to Congressman Case and Congressman Kahele, to Senator Schatz and Senator Hirono, because if we ever needed our congressional delegation to be our champions in Congress, we need that now. Because if we don't, this Red Hill Fuel Facility, and like what Congressman Case has mentioned, and Congressman Kahele, there are some provisions that are troubling in their proposed legislation in the bill that would allow for potentially the continued storage of fuel at Red Hill. And we know that is not good for our community. It's not good for our future, for our resources. We need to protect the vai and continue to treat the vai as a precious gift from Ke'akua. Olai Kawai. It is something that we have to treat as a gift. We live on an island and we have limited freshwater resources, so every drop is precious. So a big mahalo to all of you that have come out tonight, and to those that are listening for your efforts to protect the vai and also to conserve it by only using what you need and not wasting it. Earlier was mentioned about $195 million. That's what we estimate as the potential cost of the replacement wells, all the way to putting them into production. Right now, we're just trying to get to the stage of drilling the exploratory well at different locations to figure out how much water we might have and what the quality of that water might be that's suitable for drinking purposes. So that's where we stand right now, and I'll just turn it back to the Congressman for Q&A. Mahalo.
Thanks, Ernie.
Hey, Ernie, maybe you could just summarize for everybody a little bit more the discussions that you had with both Congressman Kahele and I last week about exactly why you believe that we should be drilling replacement wells now, because the Navy wells themselves are still down, right? And so there's a very good justification for the new wells that you want to come up with. I think maybe everybody would benefit, and why that is an important part of what we're doing.
Thank you, Congressman. One thing to remember, it's not just the events that occurred last year, potentially in May and in November, and the possibility that it might be an amount of about 19,000 gallons. But remember, this facility was built completed in 1943. And over that 79 years or so, there's been documented releases, at least 72 documented releases. And what they estimate, and this is from Navy reports that came out during the contested case hearing, that there might be as much as 180,000 gallons of past fuel releases that's stuck someplace in the lava rock below those tanks. And our concern is not only about the releases last year, but could the releases that occurred over its history now become mobile and start to move toward the groundwater? And over time would be a continuing problem that we face in that aquifer out there. And we believe based on field test data collected by the USGS with our cooperation and with the cooperation of the Navy and the state, that there is a potential flow gradient across Halawa Valley. There's still a lot of discussion, a lot of research and analysis done to confirm that. But should that be true, then the contamination or releases of the past may still haunt us into the future. We need to learn to live with this. So by drilling new wells, we're not banking all of our futures on that one question: will fuel get across the valley with the groundwater? We're being prepared to take it on under a worst case situation where the answer to that question might be yes in a few years, and we've not wasted those 2 years to look for new wells for new supply capacity.
Right, and so I'm going to say what I understood it, and you tell me if I got this correct. So we're talking now about city and county wells drawing water for city use, not for the military. And you suspended, out of an abundance of caution, you suspended the use of those wells now, right? Primarily in Halawa Valley. And your concern is that if we don't exactly know right now whether eventually we will not be able to reopen the Halawa well, for example, we might as well start down the road right now of a new well somewhere else that doesn't bear that risk, right?
Yes.
Okay, cool. Thanks.
Okay. So at this point, I think both Congressman Case, myself, and Ernie Lau have presented the most relevant, current, real-time information in the situation that we're dealing with. And now we would like to hear from you and do our best to answer any questions you have. You know, we wouldn't be able to do this if we didn't have our hardworking staff. And so both Congressman Case and myself, as well as staff of the Board of Water Supply and other relevant state agencies, thank you for doing all your hard work. My staff can stand up. My staff is here in the front row: Hanale Liloy, Kana Smith, Michael Ahn, Ethan McCowan. We have Nestor Garcia here from Congressman Case's office. Anyone else?
No, just Nestor.
And then also, we realized that not everybody, we wanted a big enough venue so we could spread out because of COVID, but also realized that everyone has lives and everyone's home too. So if it wasn't for OEV TV, we wouldn't be able to stream this live, which we're doing as well. So mahalo nui loa to OEV TV and the team that is taking this into homes all over Hawaii, and so they can watch the live stream. It's Q&A time. This is how I think we can best facilitate this. So we have our staff here. Kana, can you stand up? We have a wireless microphone. There needs to be some type of order into asking questions. So I think if you want to ask a question, you can ask whatever you want. We should start that line here. We can also start it on both sides. And you can come up. Kana will hold the mic. You can ask your question. We'd like to get through as many questions as we can. We know Congressman Case has a flight to catch. Mine's about an hour later. We plan to be here till 9. However, we're going to do our best to answer all of your questions. So what we would like to do, to be mindful of everyone, is to limit your question to 2 minutes, or your comment to 2 minutes, or share what you want to share for 2 minutes, so that we can move on to the next person. And we have where's our signage? Ethan, Hanale. We have a sign that'll indicate how much time you have left. And then when your time reaches 2 minutes, we'd like you to complete your comment or your question so we can move on to the other person, so we can make sure that everybody asks their question. That's only fair. If you want to ask another question, you can go back in line and come back to ask another question. But let's be fair for everyone's here, so that everyone can ask their question. And if our elected officials that are also here tonight as well would like to make a comment as well, please let us know. Does that sound like a good plan? Okay, so with that being said, and direct your question or comment to someone specific, and we'll do our best to answer your questions. We also have our staff who is capturing your information. You can go up to them as a follow-up if you want. If your question wasn't answered exactly how you wanted it to, or it requires further research on behalf of our team, and we'll do that. And so just see our staff. Hanale's here in the blue shirt. Nestor Garcia is here in the front. We have Ethan. Wherever Ethan went, raise your hand. Here's Ethan here. And ready to begin? All right, here we go.
Hi. Question to both members of Congress, whichever one or both want to respond. In the SGH report, on numbered pages 302 and 320, and possibly other places, they expressly leave open the possibility of reopening the Red Hill facility after repairs. I find that outrageous and obviously contrary to Secretary Austin's decision. I want to know how that crept into the report, into this so-called assessment, and what you guys can do to make sure that possibility is completely foreclosed. Thank you.
Thanks, Alan. Well, first of all, your congressional delegation has said that Red Hill must be closed. And we're going to exert every aspect of our power and influence and tricks of the trade to make sure that that does happen and go through the steps that are necessary to close that safely. Now, the independent consultant wasn't asked about the merits of whether or not to close it. So I don't know how that sentence got in. I'm not worrying about it because I think we're locked down pretty tight on the course that we're going down. I mean, the Secretary of Defense has ordered it. Congressional committees are saying it's going to happen. We're funding the closure. I think we just, and the military I think that they hold out. I mean, I have talked to, as has Congressman Kahele and the two senators, we have talked to all of the leaders of our military throughout the last, especially 6 months. And my assessment is that they are absolutely not going backwards on this. Now, they do have to close it safely. They have to defuel it safely. They feel that obligation. They are supporting the budget's figures. The president didn't just invent a $1 billion figure. That came from a recommendation from the Department of Defense, and $1 billion is a lot of money. And so I think they're on it. They have already determined how they are going to distribute the fuel that is coming out of Red Hill. They've got that planned. I've gotten that summary in a classified setting. It is classified, but they have that plan ready to go. And they are well into the planning of a replacement for the capacity of fuel storage. So I think that they've sailed the ship, so to speak, and I don't think it's coming back.
Yeah, I'd also agree with that. The independent assessment was done to take a look at all options. And, I'm looking at, Alan, that exact page on page 315 that talks about ongoing operations if you were to do that recommendation. They included that, so they did a very comprehensive independent assessment, but that is not the position of this delegation, and that is not the position clearly of the United States Congress, the Secretary of Defense, or the President. The decision has been made to defuel, decommission, and permanently shut down Red Hill. It's how do we do that?
Aloha, my name is Jessica. Sorry, I'm losing my voice a bit. So I am here to kind of ask in reference to, do you feel that the reasoning behind it taking so long to have a safe relocation of the oil really comes down to the regulations that we have as a whole and all these hurdles, that we have too many regulations, we have too many checks, points, and balances that actually hinder the process, and we could actually complete this more if we had less regulation in certain areas to better protect the people and also the community, the water. That's my first question. My second question is, I see so much funding going towards everything else. My biggest concern right now is the people who are greatly affected, who are not getting the proper hospital care, medical care, due to the fact of their impact. And when you actually speak to the people about that, that seems to be a great concern, and the lack of transparency with the DOH and even their communication and evaluations. And when they went into these homes, when they went in to test the water, they're not getting these results back. I find that when we talk about transparency, I feel like that's actually a huge duty to the people that this is greatly affecting and displacing as a whole. So I would just like to hear how we're taking care of the people first and foremost, and then everything else as it falls into place. Because again, I really feel Hawaii first, America first. I heard the emergency funding going to Ukraine, but truth be told, this is a serious matter, and the funding needs to go here first. Thank you.
Thank you so much for those thoughts. You know, I'm not a fan of regulation for the sake of regulation, but in this case, yeah, I think we need adequate regulation. And you know, the fact is that everybody has to be part of this solution, and the Navy or any other part of the military can't have a carte blanche to do this however they want. They require oversight, they require the regulation, they require the direction, and I think they welcome that at this point. And so, you know, I guess I can't agree with you in all respect that we need less regulation to get ourselves through a very, very complex, process. And again, I would say that what I'm particularly focused on is defueling safely. I don't want to worsen this problem by defueling hastily or defueling, incautiously. And so I think that is time that is necessary to be spent. So that's number one. The health concerns, I think, have been preeminent right from the get-go, especially the folks that were directly impacted by contaminated water in their homes. Well, the state and city were clearly working with it. I'm not going to defend the entire process for over a decade. You know, I'm kind of focused right now on what do we do now? How do we get it done? How do we get this done safely? How do we get to closure? How do we take care of an alternative national defense need that I think is a legitimate one? So that's my direction here. Now, there are still folks that call my office, and I'm sure Congressman Kahele's office, to express direct health concerns, and we are there to help them. We help them. We try to get them answers. We have some. The military is still obviously listening and trying to answer those questions where people don't feel that they have been answered. We definitely intercede on their behalf. We've still got some questions as to the potential of long-term health effects that we have to track very carefully for quite a while. And so if there's anybody out there listening who feels that your health care concerns are not being answered, well, I think, okay, I'm sorry, I think I did, but I just said I'm not going to
their lack of health care right now is actually happening right now, and they are
I'm seeing. I'm sorry, so are you talking about Red Hill caused health care?
Yes, I'm talking about the people who are affected with water contamination and
Okay.
are now getting denied medical health care when they go to the hospital because they are in that.
All right, well, I don't think that's right. So I'm happy to look into that on your behalf. I'm sorry I didn't quite get it.
First and foremost, I want to thank you guys for putting together this town hall. Government should do it every week. My name's Ryan Malish. I'm running for State Senate, District 9. And one of the, I guess a question I have for you guys is, and I want to offer a solution too, but what type of fuel is stored there? Is it a mixture of different grades? Is it just jet fuel? Is it diesel? Is it gasoline? If it is, has anybody talked about putting it in our tanks to lower the price of gas? Okay, and then as far as the solution goes, I would like to recommend that you guys seriously consider temporarily suspending the Jones Act to get those tanks pumped out to oil ships. Put it on an oil tanker. You need it out. Where else are you going to put it? There is no facility on this island to house it. We can't do that because it has to be an American ship, right? Because of the Jones Act. But there's plenty. Indonesia, Saudi Arabia, the list goes on and on. I'm sure one of them would be willing to loan us a ship to drain the tanks. Thank you very much.
So to answer your first question, there are 3 types of fuel that is held at the Red Hill Bulk Fuel Storage Facility. The first type is F-76 Marine Diesel. Disco, that's the largest amount that we have there, right? F-24 is Air Force jet fuel that goes to Hickam Air Force Base, and then JP-5, which is a universal fuel. So there are 3 types of fuels there at Red Hill. Jones Act?
Well, you know, we could probably open this up to a lot of issues, and I'd be happy to talk to you about the Jones Act in another forum, and high gas prices, by the way. I really think that we should just stay on Red Hill. So I'm going to stay on Red Hill. This is about Red Hill. Again, you know, to link this to Red Hill, we can't and shouldn't move that fuel out of Red Hill until we're satisfied we can do so safely. And the independent consultants report, all 880 pages of it, said that we have to take certain actions before we do that. And I think we need to do that. So even if it was a possibility, and it's not refined gasoline, as I recall, it's not like you can, you know, put it right into a car. But even if it was, we shouldn't move that fuel until we know it's safe.
Okay, Connor.
Gary Hillman. Gentlemen, thank you for all you do. I'm a chief engineer, so I'm not going to talk politics. But there's plenty of people in the civilian world that has solutions for remediation that we would like to make available to you. Somewhere on your website, it would be nice to have a link to upload opportunities, products, materials, technology, procedures that may assist in the cleanup of the fuel in the water and other items as well. I don't know if you've looked at taking civilian input from the outside to assist in the process, but as the chief engineer, there's plenty of people that I have connections with that are willing to offer their insights and their expertises. And the only other item I'd like to address is the training of the individuals stationed that are operating that facility. And it appalls me of the seriousness of the nature that training would go uncertified and come to a level of mundane, routine procedures, not following process. You need to get yourself a submarine Navy Master Sergeant Chief and help him police the process of the operations of that pumping station. I know it's complex. I know it's 70 years old. And the need for some expertise at that level needs to be a high priority if we're going to move that fuel anywhere.
Thanks for the question. You know, once we do our job in the Congress and we appropriate the funds to the various agencies or the military, the departments, it's really on the administration to then figure out how they want to procure that, how they want to notice that, and source those contracts. I do know that there are local contractors that are doing soil remediation. They are doing and have installed a series of probes and sensors in the lower adit, and there are contracts that they are working on. And so, Disco, raise your hand. This is Disco Bennett. He works for the Commander of the Pacific Fleet. You're sitting right next to him, so maybe you guys can talk. And then your second question was regarding the operations and procedures of this facility, and I couldn't agree with you more. You know, it's my understanding that there were only less than 5, or I think it is 3, FTE full-time positions that were designated towards the Red Hill facility. And that's just not enough to run a facility that is so critical to the nation and so critical to Oahu's water supply. And we've, you know, used the term operating it like a nuclear-powered aircraft carrier, and that's really how this should have been treated. And if it had been, there's a high likelihood that this wouldn't have happened. And so thank you for your comment.
I just would add to that there is another report that we are waiting for right now, and that is an internal review of what the Navy believes happened and why, an independent internal review. So not the people that actually were involved, but inspectors general who are responsible for reporting and reviewing objectively. But it's really critical that we know exactly what happened and why. Now, we still have to do what we have to do now based on the independent consultants report and the state of Hawaii's review. Whatever happened in the past, it happened, and we've got to go forward now and, like I said, remediate, defuel, and close. And we've got to develop that plan, but we still have to know exactly what happened and why, because there are obvious lessons to be learned here for everybody. And one key ingredient of that is the command report, as it's referred to, which we are expecting also momentarily. And so that's going to be public. We got a commitment some months ago from the Department of Defense that was not going to be held back, that we would all know what they believe happened and why. And so that's still out there.
Good evening. My name is Alyssa Hirai. I'm a junior at Georgetown University. Thank you for speaking with us today. And my question is, aside from constructing new wells, have there been any efforts in looking into desalination technologies or anything else to diversify the water source and ensure that it's more resilient? Thank you.
Thank you for the question. Yes, we are actually in the process right now of going through the procurement process for a seawater desalination plant in Campbell, Kalailoa. It's a very small plant. We're going through the procurement process right now. We also are looking at, is it possible to even treat the water at Halawa Shaft if it got contaminated, and doing those studies. But I'm told it's very challenging because petroleum is a mixed bag of chemicals, and really it's difficult to figure out what you're treating for and at what levels. But thank you.
I will also add that there's a couple of things happening right now. One, if I'm not mistaken, the Navy continues to attempt to remediate the Red Hill well, and as of last week had extracted over 600 million, almost 600 million gallons of water from the Red Hill aquifer, ran it through the granular activated charcoal filters, and dispensed that treated water into Halawa Stream. That's one piece. The second piece is that because the Red Hill well is not part of the Navy's water system, and I also believe the Aiea Halawa Shaft is not part of the Navy's water system right now, and they are only operating off of the Waiawa water well or shaft, and that has a certain amount of yield that they are allowed to pull out of the Waiawa well for their Navy water system. And you can't pull too much water out of the well because you'll affect other wells, and you also pull up, I guess it would be sodium or salt. And so that's the other thing to factor in, is how much the Navy needs as we approach and are in the hot summer months, and also what is being potentially wasted into Halawa Stream. Anything to add with that, Ernie?
Just one thing is what it's unclear, at least to me, is how effective what they're doing right now at removing fuel from the aquifer itself, the contamination. We're not clear if it's being really effective, but it is pumping between, I think it's 4 to 5 million gallons a day out of Red Hill Shaft, not into the drinking water system, but into carbon treatment contactors, or GAC or GAC units, and then discharge into Halawa Stream. But there's one thing that, we're asking all the BWS customers right now to look at water conservation, especially as we get into the summer months. We have less supply because 3 wells are shut down. We're asking everybody's kokua. And maybe Disco, if he's still here, can actually consider maybe the Navy, to its customers of Joint Base Pearl Harbor Hickam, needs to actually put out a stronger conservation message to everybody to conserve water because they are pumping only one well right now, Waiava Shaft, and the Water Commission's concerned because they're pumping beyond their allowable permitted use for that well on a 12-month moving average. So everybody needs to save water, even the Navy. Mahalo.
Yeah, just to clarify, as of June 10th, from the Secretary of the Navy, they have pumped 537 million gallons of water from the Red Hill well. They filtered it through the GACs, like Ernie mentioned, and discharged it into Halava Stream.
Aloha, my name is Kimberly Kopacek, and I'm a family nurse practitioner here on Oahu that has served, protected, and saved lives for the last 22 years. I want to thank you for allowing us the opportunity to do questions and answers, but there's a lot of questions that remained unanswered. My concern is I'm a strong activist here in our community, and because our voices of we the people are not being heard, I am now running for Hawaii State House Representative of District 44 for the West Side. There's a mother, thank you. There's a concerned mother that came up to me when I was speaking in front of the state capitol, and she is from Hickam Base, and she told me that she told me about the fuel, and this was last year. She told me she did not receive this experimental injection. She decided not to be a human test subject in a human study that doesn't end until May of 2023. And I'd like an opportunity to have a meeting with both of you. I have a lot of concerns, and I won't bring that up right now. With that being said, she has a lot of abdominal tumors. She went to Tripler, and because her son is vaccine injured, he did not get the experimental injection. The father is on the military base. He did get the injection. She was denied necessary medical care. I have ran 3 of our ERs night shift as a nurse, charge nurse here. We don't deny anyone necessary medical care. If someone comes in without a license, they are named Jane Doe. We treat everybody. This is unacceptable. She wanted to bring us on to the base. I also used to work for Schofield in our only acute care clinic here. I served all the soldiers and all their family members. I could go on to any base as long as I had my driver's license. They told her that we would have to have background checks. Well, that's fine, because I already got that approved and I was cleared because I worked for them. Then they threatened her. Kyle is here. He films a lot of our films for us so we can continue to share the truth and expose the lies, the deception, and deceit. There needs to be transparency. I've read the Hawaii federal funding. It's not transparent. Where are these 880 pages that you describe? How do we find that? We deserve to know. I've read all the Hawaii federal funding. So I hope you all give me the opportunity to have a meeting with you because our other politicians haven't. Josh Green called the police on me when I went to his meet and greet as governor. I just wanted to ask him a question from a healthcare professional to another. I've been to the Department of Health twice, refused meetings. I've been to the Department of Education twice, refused meetings. It is time to stand for we the people. Thank you.
If one of our staff members can get your information, we will, Hanale, right here. We will email you that SGH report. It is a redacted version, but we will put that in your inbox tonight, and then please connect with our staff and we can speak for a meeting.
Talk story. We were told I would be able to speak. You didn't allow any of us to speak. I had a woman who actually was on the computer even typing questions for me. Why aren't our voices being heard, and why aren't our questions being addressed? This is a big concern to me, not only as a citizen, but as a healthcare provider protecting my community.
Thank you for that. And Nestor Garcia will get you your information. And I think the other thing that, Nestor, if I could just, I think we just should put the report on our website so people can just go there and look at it. So we'll do that tomorrow. Okay, well, I'm happy to meet with you. I do meet with people who want to meet with me. As to my talk story, just so I address that point, I had a ton of questions, and it was just far more efficient for me to take the actual transcription of the question and answer it, and that's what I did. So that's why I have had other talk stories where I have had people, ask their questions personally, but I had a very limited amount of time. So if that person wants to talk to me personally, I'm happy to meet with them too.
On Hickam, these people that are, some of them were put in hotels, then they were put back into their homes. Their water was not being tested, and I wanted to go there. We wanted to film the truth. This is not acceptable. At the Honolulu shopping center, I went there to different shops, and I talked to them. They had their water tested. 1 month later, they didn't get a result. No one's been back to test their water. There are restaurants there. This is unacceptable. children with dental caries, esophageal abrasions from irritation erosion from fuel. This is 60, 70, how many plus years of this? This is not acceptable.
It is not acceptable, and we want to try to ask those questions and get to the bottom of the answers.
Aloha, I'm Davy Ann Momilani Thomas. I'm born and raised from Oahu and 17 and a half years a part of this military community. But my husband is 22 years Navy retired since 1 month before we found out about the Red Hill. So October, he retired last year. First off, I want to say Representative Kahele, Representative Ed Case, and Ernie Lau, thank you guys so much for being the stronger voices for our home, Oahu. I mean, when Kahele came out and Ernie Lau came out, it was like our real superheroes. You know, you guys are the strongest, and I feel bad for you folks. But thank you guys so much for not backing down. There's a few concerns. I'm going to try as quickly to go through to not take up everybody's time and your time. But the Navy PVC pipes, which is there many places across this island, even in our local community, not just Joint Base, not just AMR, right? And 12 of our Navy housings, 2 of our Army housings, and I believe, 2 or 1 of our Marine housings, and then there's Hickam, and then there's Kapalina Beach Homes. And then we have the local shopping centers, right? The eateries, the dineries, the 2 joint bases, commissaries, et cetera, et cetera. I'm concerned. I'm going to be honest. Since December 2nd, when I put my foot down to be the commander-in-chief in my Pearl City Peninsula Navy housing home of 6.5 years, I told my husband and my sons, we are not touching this water. I don't care if Department of Health is going to be, not Department of Health, sorry, that came later. But I don't care if the Navy's going to keep saying, and my Navy housing managers, Hunt Ohana, is going to keep saying that our water is safe and everything because we are on the Pearl City Wai'ava water. We did not eat at many places. We're careful. Everywhere the Navy PVC pipes is. So my concern is the Navy planning to change out all their PVC pipes? I mean, we know that millions of dollars, even $1 billion is cheap for our Department of Defense to be spending. That is cheap for them. So are they willing to change out the PVC pipes? Because it's been going on for long. And I have a father that retired from Chevron and Standard Oil, and he used to be in the Air Force and worked with jet fuel. And I have other family members and friends that were previous military too, that are engineers and plumbers and all that. They told me, Momilani, the PVC pipes and the plumbing is not to be trusted because it's all in there. So that's my one concern. My next concern is this 2-year plan of the water action plan that the Navy conducted and put together and our Pentagon. I still have not received my water test results. So I received a call on, I think it was Friday, Aloha Friday, March 12th, and NAVFAC Hawaii surprised me and said they're choosing my house in the Pearl City Peninsula Navy housing to come and test my home. I was open for it. And that due to this 2-year plan. Well, they came Monday, March 14th, a bunch of, about 4 or 5 of Navy scientists came, and they were all wearing PPEs. The first time I ever seen anyone come in our home with PPEs. All those young sailors did not wear any of those when the poor thing was coming to flush and do all that to our home in December. Anyways, long story short, they went straight up to my son's bathroom, which I'm thankful they did, but no results, not even online. When I called the EOC, the emergency hotline on our Joint Base Pearl Harbor in April, because I kept asking questions, I was getting the runarounds. I even sent an email. I didn't hear nothing back. I did. A lieutenant called me sometime in March, but I told him I don't want my house to be flushed again. I don't trust the Navy doing this because I don't trust our Department of Health EAL levels. It's too high, too high. So our EOC, this one gentleman, he said, oh, Paul, I'm so sorry. He said that the Navy disbanded those scientists that came into my home. So I'm confused about this whole thing. So I just want you guys to know that I want to make sure they're not putting a wool over your folks' eyes. Because to me, I think the Navy's being quiet. We're retired, so I think the Navy's being too quiet. One last thing I need to cover. Last week, I had a sit-down talk with our Navy Housing Executive Regional Manager. We were about 8 of us residents signed up for us. Only 3 of us showed up. I spoke. I was trying so hard to be strong. I ended up showing all my emotions, crying, my frustrations, because I did 4.5 years. I did the neighborhood watch. I did everything for my Pearl City Peninsula. I basically shared aloha and pono to the Hawaii military community, and even communications to our Navy, HPD, everything, because the Navy and the HPD, oh my God, there's no communications from the Navy. Anyways, what I'm trying to say here, sorry. I basically said that that it's not fair that Hunt, our corporate, our landlord, Ohana, has no jurisdiction to our water line, and that they continue to hide this from new residents and existing residents, and that I have to be the one to somehow, without getting on everybody, telling everybody what to do. Anyways, everything that we put in, we're hoping changes come. Can you folks make sure, can our Congress make sure that Hunt is going to do their part? They call this the focus meeting that they did last week for our residents. Can you make sure that everything that we put in, we told them this is a multi-billion-dollar company that's here on our Hawaii, our landlord. And they need to show local hospitality, Hawaiian hospitality, exactly what I did for our community without asking for anything in return. But please, they need to. I'm sorry it took so much time. There's just so much to say, so much on our minds. But thank you so much for hearing me.
Thank you so much for sharing your thoughts. Those came from your heart, and for your family's service. You didn't deserve this, and you don't deserve this. So number one, the answer is absolutely yes. We have been in touch with many of the military housing contractors about specific issues in specific communities, and Nestor can get you that information. We can get a direct answer from Hunt for you if you're not getting it. Can we leave it there? I think we heard you. I was going to ask Ernie to comment a little bit on his evaluation. Why don't you do that? I think that's about the testing of the water, the regular testing of the water, and the assessment of the quality of the water.
So the testing is really between the Department of Health, EPA, and the Navy, and I think everybody understands that they're doing the testing. Mamilani, if you could write down or maybe email me, or Nestor can write it down for me, I appreciate it, because I have a meeting with the Department of Health coming up about some of the concerns about health issues related to Red Hill. We'll be meeting with them, so I can use that opportunity to convey your concerns. So mahalo, Mamilani. Mahalo.
And we should be able to find out for you, if your home was selected for testing in March, they came to your home and they tested your water, and you have not received those results yet, then that's a problem. And this is almost July. So we can submit that RFI to the Navy or whoever was in charge of spot testing these homes, which we know they were doing back in March and April when they were flushing the homes. So we should be able to get that answer for you.
Hi, my name is Veronica Crescioni. Like Dee, I am a military spouse living here in Hawaii. I live on Hickam Air Force Base. Try not to cry. First question, or maybe a statement, for your FY23 President's budget, the $1 million. The big thing that stands out for me right there is the health. Our health was not assessed properly. We were not allowed any testing. We could write down all the symptoms we had, everything we went through, everything our kids went through, and then it was put on a paper and put in our records so we could be studied for the next few years or whatever. The head medical officer said there are no long-term side effects. There are. We deal with them every day. I am one of thousands of people dealing with things still. And our water still is not clean. It is still contaminated. You run it in a clean cup. I've gone to the store thinking I'm crazy. I'm gonna buy a new cup. I'm gonna pour my water in here. It's gonna be clean this time, and it's not. We have not used our water in our home except to flush our toilets. We had our home flushed 6 times over the spring. My husband's commander has been amazing. He works on a separate base. He's Air Force. And Joint Base Commander told my husband's commander, their water is clean. It's good to go. Go for it. And I said, fine, I will try it. I took a bath. I took a shower. I brushed my teeth. This was in April. I ended up in urgent care, and they sent me on to the ER. And now I have a permanently, hopefully not permanently, but I've been told a permanently damaged esophagus and epiglottis, which sometimes there are days where I can hardly swallow. And there's only certain medications you can take for that because then your throat can just close up and you can't do anything. I understand there's a whole process to closing down Red Hill. I'm glad that process is starting. But for us that are dealing with this, and not just military, we're only here temporarily. I mean, to say I'm so thankful we get to leave Hawaii, one of the most beautiful places there are, I will be so thankful when I get to leave. But there are so many people that this is their home. I mean, Dee, she's generational Hawaiian here, and her family is here, and it's in the water. I followed Ernie since December and watched his videos that he's had out for years and years. And the only reason we were allowed back in our homes and told that the water was safe is because the EPA and the DOH and the Navy raised the allowable levels. We are humans. You can't raise the levels and, oh, okay, you're okay with this now. No. It makes us sick. We are going to die younger. We are going to have issues. And it's ridiculous that this is happening to us. Capulina had it worse than any military housing. Those are civilians, and they didn't even get the 2 packs of water we got a day. They got one once in a while. And a lot of those people had to move to the mainland, which they've never even been out of the state before, so that they could not go through bankruptcy. I understand Red Hill is going to be shut down, but parallel, people need to be taken care of, and we're not. The Navy is not to be trusted in this. There's too many miscommunications and manipulations going on, and it's very scary, and I know as a military spouse on a Facebook group, contamination group, there's thousands of us, and we feel trapped. We just feel trapped and stuck and not heard, and all the health concerns are the same as they were in December. Rashes, sickness, you name it, from December, it's still happening now. It needs to be dealt with, and the Navy needs to be held accountable.
Thank you for sharing that. If our staff can get your information, thank you for your service, your husband's service. You know, this is something that is personal to me as well, because like you, I've been at Hickam Air Force Base for the last 21 years of my military career. I consumed water at the Hickam Air Force Base Commissary on the 26th of November. And my family, my wife and 2 daughters, and several members of my staff, including the one sitting right next to you, consumed water at Ruby Tuesdays at the restaurant on that Sunday night, November 28th, the night that the Navy took offline the Red Hill well, when they knew that there was fuel in that well. So this is what has driven me to fight for our military service members, our families, the people of this island, and working together with the delegation to shut this facility down. But we will Obviously, we can follow up with your specific concern. As a veteran myself, we document the times that we consumed the water and how it affected us and our health. Eventually, at some point, we will all military service members fall to the VA, to the Veterans Affairs, and they will be responsible for our long-term health care. And there are situations like what has happened at Camp Lejeune and other military locations throughout the country where there have been financial costs that the nation has had to pay to service members because of incidents like this. So this is not something that we are going to let the United States military get away with.
I would just echo everything that Kai just said. Whoever told you that there was absolutely no long-term effects, that was not an appropriate comment. We don't know. We don't think so, maybe, but we don't know, and that's why. And you know this very well, but for anybody out there who's listening who may not know it, you definitely should put yourself into the surveys, the long-term surveys that are available to you right now, so that the incident is not lost. If something does happen in whatever 6 or 8 years, and you think there might be some connection back to it. So please take advantage of that opportunity and obligation by our military to get you into the long-term surveys.
My name is Gina Hara. I'm from Halava Valley. I've been coming to every single meeting since 2014 when the initial spill happened. I missed one meeting in 2019 and watched it on video. What I would like to say is, to go back to the previous person, the 100 parts per billion was always the amount of safety by the Board of Water for many years. We had no problem with 100 parts per billion for TPHD, which is diesel fuel in our water. We should not have more than that, because at 160 parts per billion, we can smell it and taste it. Why is it 400? That's because in 2016, the Red Hill well spiked at 1,600 parts per billion. That means that's 660 times the safety amount. So the Department of Health raised it to 400 parts per billion at the protest. At the Board of Water pleaded with the Department of Health. Several letters were given back and forth saying that's wrong, don't raise it to 400. 2 people in the Department of Health raised it. It was Roger Brewer, who I went to go meet about this case. Also, there's another person, Roxana Faith. They are very much believing it should be 400 parts per billion, but as you can see, should not be that. The people were returned to their home and they're very sick. Another point I would like to make that is missed is that in December 6th, some people moved to their house. That's even before the big spill came out. They were already getting sick. Let's note that the Department of Health has eliminated in their timeline that there was an injunction hearing. They were sued. They had to be sued because of the way they were handling Red Hill. If it was not for the 13-hour injunction hearing, we would not have known 19,000 gallons was missing. That's a huge miss. That had to come out because a lawyer, Earth Justice, Board of Water lawyer, went after, what is this missing 19,000? Could that be part of the problem why it's coming out in people's houses? So this is the kind of transparency that we need to demand and document. Let's note also this week, Camp Lejeune activists as well as the Alaska activists have contacted us and told our community that it wasn't 30,000 gallons in Camp Lejeune, it was 1.5 million gallons that was in the water that they lied about. This is how the military works. I'm not saying military people are bad. I'm just saying the system makes it this way. We have to be realistic. And we have to be like Alaska. Alaska came and told us they've already gone through all this. Their aquifers are polluted. They have PFOAs. Their water springs have been polluted and they can't be remediated. Remediation is not just sucking it out of the aquifer and trying to clean it with GAC. Remediation means you need indigenous microorganisms attenuated with oil-eating microorganisms, and don't let the military tell you natural attenuation is the cure. It is not. They say that everywhere. If you Google natural attenuation, they say that to every community that they've polluted. There's 469 communities that have been polluted across the US from PFOAs, and the Department of Health has told me that being polluted by jet fuel is not as bad as PFOAs, so they're not that worried. The EPA told me from day one that microorganisms naturally attenuated and they're organic, so this situation doesn't worry them that much. They said that on the stage in 2014. Note, in 2014, the Excel spreadsheet that the Navy was using was the same Excel spreadsheet from 15 years prior, and you can see that. It used to be able to see that on the EPA website. So it's the same thing that happened, but it's a different people, different politicians, different activists. I wasn't able to be there 15 years prior, but I've been there since 2014, and I'm telling you, we've been stonewalled every single meeting. Everybody believes that the military economy is important to Hawaii. The politicians were on the side of Red Hill and the Navy, all this. We've been going through a double lining. We've been through trying to find another place. We've been lied to. I have been lied to. At every single testimony that I've given, the Navy guy tells me about the place, and he never answers. And it's because he was making a walkable city in Makalapa. That was the site C and L where we're supposed to have our moving of the tanks over the capped rock, not on the aquifer. And we know it's actually in the aquifer. Red Hill is not on the aquifer, it's in the aquifer. Why? Because when it rains, Vincent Peters, who worked there for a long time, we got him on video, he says that when it rains in the pipes. He has a tin roof, a totan roof over the pipes so it doesn't rust. That's why there's 880 pages of things that an independent person took a photo of. If they had 880 pages to talk about, they were lying to us all this time for all 76 leaks. Yes? That's right. We don't even have to read it. We know they're lying to us. And they only give us 180 pages to make it not look so bad. We need to, according to Alaska, document everything, they said. And Lejeune told us 25 years later, the guy's getting breast cancer, everybody's sick, they have genetic defects, all this kind of worst case scenario. We don't even have to go there because we got people, look how they look right now. We got all the pictures, all the babies. I mean, what are we talking about just talking about Red Hill? When we look at this as a community, I found out there's 1,000 leaks. There's more toxicity. Everywhere the military goes, everything is toxic because everything goes to the water. We cannot just look at Red Hill. So the problem I'm trying to say to you is it's bigger than Red Hill. This is the tip of the iceberg. The system is bad. The whole system, addressing the system is wrong. The system addressing the system is what caused 2021. The system, it was the system that doesn't do anything. We go to meeting after meeting after meeting. How much of our time, we need to charge them, by the way, for all of this overtime. Honestly. And we need to, this is what we need to do. We need to plan to remediate our water through we need to separate the money from the Navy. We don't want to be following what the Navy says is the solution. They don't have the solution. They don't have the solution. We need an escrow fund. We need an escrow fund. We need to get that money, put it away from them. We don't need to hire people from abroad. We can consult them, but we need to find how to use those microorganisms similar to Korean natural farming. That thing does get eaten up. Okay, so we need that, and we need to have our own testing. We don't want their testing. You know why? Because You know why we don't want their testing? Because in 2016, the same time the Department of Health raised the TPHD to 400, the Navy says instead of 64 contaminants, they want only 10 contaminants, and they want to destroy the data set. When we are contaminated like that, don't you think we should increase the amount of data set? We should be expanding it for PFOAs. We should have the whole array. They should pay for it, and we shouldn't depend on them and
Gina,
wait for them.
It's 8 o'clock, and we have to let the person behind you ask their question. What I can tell you, Gina, is there is no acceptable parts per billion level of fuel that belongs in the Red Hill well.
Read the paper I will give you. Okay, thank you.
Thank you. Thank you, Gina. So it's 8:01 p.m. We have 59 minutes before we have to get out of our auditorium. So just be mindful for everyone else that's patient standing in line. Thank you. It wasn't clear what Gina's question was. We understood everything that she said. I'm in total agreement, and we will get to the bottom of this. It's why we're here right now. And thank you so much for all the time and all the effort since 2014 you put into this. I do not agree with the raising of the emergency action levels that were raised years ago. I think that is problematic as well. And so there, like I said earlier, there is no fuel that belongs in the Red Hill well, in the shaft, in any of our aquifers, no matter how many parts per billion it is.
You need to investigate that, and you need to know that Roger Buer is ex-military. He's ex-Navy. He's the one who raised it.
Ernie, do you have any comments on the EALs or any of that was, I know you probably are much more knowledgeable than Rep. Kesa on that subject.
Gina, thank you. I remember you from 2014 and coming out to the community meetings at Mauna Loa Middle School, so mahalo. And I think you hit all the right points. The reduction in number of chemicals to be tested from 64 to, I thought it was 12, and that was approved by the Department of Health. Also, the raising of the level to test for the minimum acceptable level. I remember in 2014, Roger Burke made the comment to me that you can start to taste fuel at about 100 parts per billion diesel. And, we looked at that very closely, and Erwin's up in the audience here, and we studied that, we researched that. We actually agree that when you can start to taste or smell the fuel in the water, that should be your minimum level. And if that level is lower, that's actually more precautionary. So thank you, Gina, for your comments. Malo.
My name is Amanda. I'm actually the Amanda that Representative Kahele spoke about December 2nd in Washington, D.C. He spoke about my family situation and myself. So I have a few questions, and I have some backup information. I will try to go as fast as I can. So I'd like to know, I watched your presentation, what oversight of the military healthcare system is being done? Why 6 months later is the military health services for those that have been affected by the contaminated water still inadequate? There should be more oversight and more providers that are there just for those who have been affected, since everyone else is overwhelmed. What is being done to ensure everyone is in charge of making these decisions or failing to do their jobs with what you have presented are held accountable this time? Case in point, my family is one of thousands that have been affected by the jet fuel water contamination by the U.S. Navy here on Oahu. I am only going to discuss a couple things that have happened. The week of Thanksgiving, 2021, one of my children became very sick, headache, body aches, sore throat, burning throat, went to the ER. They didn't know what was going on because it hadn't been told to us what had happened. They thought it was viral. She missed school all that week. Sunday midday, like everyone has stated, we all smelt something and tasted something. Let housing know, the emergency line, they have 2 hours supposedly or 4 hours to get back to you. No one ever got back to us. But they said that I was number 3 or 4 calling. By December 1st, I went to the ER, and this is what Representative Kahele talks about. I went to the ER because I was in so much pain in my head, and my mouth and throat were so sore, even having open wounds, which I found out from the ER doctor at Tripler that they were chemical burns. The ER gave me some medicine, took a head CT, and discharged me, but shockingly, I found out my discharge paperwork said something completely different. When I questioned why it didn't state what the doctor had verbally told us about my mouth and throat having chemical burns, as well as my head pounding being due to the water contamination, the discharge nurse told me that they had a new system and no option for chemical burns in mouth. I have proof of all this. Would you like to hear it? On December 2nd, Representative Kahele spoke about my family's situation briefly and brought water from my kitchen to Washington and presented it to all those there. So since then, December 3rd, I went to Makalapa to try to see a primary care physician because I was really sick. And was told that due to the fact it was due to water contamination, I had to be seen at the Water Ohana Clinic, where the doctor checked my mouth for infection, checked my head, gave me some medicine, and said I should start feeling better. On December 6th, I still was very sick. I drove myself there and in so much pain. My head and my mouth, I was so sick and could not eat due to the burns. The doctors gave me some medicine through shots in my bottom, which were so strong, they had my husband come and get me and take me home. During these visits, I had asked for blood work and was informed there was nothing to test for, and they could not order them. They had been ordered that. On December 16th, I went back to a Water Ohana clinic where the nurses, who I will never forget, treated me so awful because she said I should be seen by a primary care doctor because I had gone before to them, to the Water Ohana clinic. But that's contrary to what I had been told prior when I had first tried. The people, she went and spoke to a few people, including the doctors at the Water Ohana Clinic who were going to see me. My husband at the time had joined me at the Water Ohana Clinic. The doctor was a different one, and two came in, a lieutenant and a lieutenant commander. The lieutenant commander mocked me, asked me if I had eaten spicy food, referencing my mouth. The lieutenant took a picture with his own phone of my mouth and said, see, she's fine. Though I still had visible open burns from the contaminated water. Their demeanor towards me was horrendous. Then they started about my head, talking about seeing a PCM. I explained I had tried. The lieutenant commander all of a sudden was able to get me a PCM appointment. I showed up to the PCM appointment. It was a few hours later the same day. And it was evident the two doctors from before at the Water Ohana Clinic had informed them of what they thought. The nurse had a huge attitude. I started to explain my situation. She interrupted me and said, "You're just here for your head," and let me know my mouth was perfectly fine, but yet she had not even seen it. So I waited for the doctor, who actually realized something was seriously wrong. I went and spoke to the previous doctor who I saw on December 3rd and 6th. Remember, we're on the 16th now. And then referred me to neurology. I got the neurology referral to Tripler Neurology. The secretary there, I called the following week because it takes time, and the secretary there informed me that she would have to check with the doctor because they said it was routine. I called back. She told me to call back. I called back. She was annoyed I called back, so she referred me out. That was probably the best thing for me. I was referred out to the healthcare system out in town. The neurologist at that point ordered up a workup and an MRI. It was determined my main nerve in my head was damaged from the water contamination. Since that point, I have had 4 procedures on my head, with another one scheduled shortly. They are very painful and debilitating. I get so sick, I literally sleep by the toilet for 1 to 2 days. Furthermore, I was hoping, first off, I have no trust with the military healthcare system as of December 16th. And therefore, I am very happy to be out in town. But in order to get anything extra, we have to go through them. So I tried to get a referral because in April, new symptoms had appeared, which I was informed could be related and are related to the water contamination. I was told I needed an appointment. I called, didn't get anyone to call me back. I went in, made the appointment. In order to make my appointment, I had to meet with a nurse who asked me 50 questions. And it was the same nurse from the Water Ohana clinic. And so I finally get my appointment, and then my symptoms got severely worse, and I asked, can I please just have a referral? And they said I had to show up. I showed up, and I was informed that the doctor would examine me by that nurse. The doctor did not examine me, he just ordered tests. They did an ultrasound on June 10th. And I had to wait till the following week to get any results or any information. Mind you, I'd asked like now at this point 4 times for a referral. I ended up having to go to Kapiolani ER that weekend on the 12th of June. And Kapiolani flat out really was shocked, but nonetheless, they wanted me to see a specialist, the specialist that I was asking for a referral for. So there you go, I got somebody outside. I have my meeting, my appointment on Friday, the 17th, with the military doctor, who informs me that the recommendation in-house was that if there's no other side effects, that you don't need one. There were side effects. He was fully aware. There's been severe side effects. And then when I stated I had gone to the ER, and mind you, I had messaged them letting them know I had gone, he told me, well, we have no data or information on that. And I said, I had messaged you. He goes, we have 72 hours to get back to you, ma'am. And I said, it's been longer than 72 hours. I messaged you Tuesday morning, and it was Friday afternoon. And then he said he would bring it up with the nurse manager. My point in being is, 6 months later, the same crap is going on for everyone trying to get assistance. This should not be. This should not be this hard. This should not be going on. Everyone's fully aware of what is going on this island. Healthcare should be there for us, and especially if it's documented, what is going on? What are you guys going to do? You guys have allotted money to healthcare. What are you doing for oversight? It's great that it says it's going to take care of the military families or take care of the people, but what does that actually mean? If you guys need help writing that, you let me know. I will help you. But I would like to hear from you, what are you guys going to do for oversight?
Well, it's just, I don't know how to express my feelings over your 7-month now ordeal. And I'm so sorry about that, first of all. It should not have happened to start with, and certainly you should not have been through the last 7 months. So the first thing, and I would say this to anybody who has a personal story in line, is we want to look into your personal story and to ask about your own situation. So if you don't feel you're getting the care that you need, and clearly many of you feel that way, which is obviously a takeaway from tonight for sure, then we need to do something about that. We want to help you individually, but more of greater concern also, or equal concern, is the bigger picture of whether that overall outreach still exists from the military, affirmative action to deal with your health concerns, affirmative reaching out to you to try to help you with your own situations, whether you have them today or not. And so from an oversight perspective, I think we would say that that's our job, is to oversee. The money that is up on the screen here is available to address healthcare concerns and should be utilized for that purpose. So certainly, I heard you loud and clear, a number of you, on this subject, that this is clearly an area to go back and deal much more assertively with the military on. So, that's what I'm going to do about it.
Aloha, I am Keline Kahau. I am a federal postal judge. I am also a Kanakamoli. The land that you're speaking of is 7713 Royal Patent, Moanaloa, Halawa. I talked to Alice Roberts and Colonel Misty Goy about this. You folks have a treaty. If there's a Secretary of Navy in here, I would like to speak with that person as well. The reason why I bring up this treaty of 1849 to 1850 is because in there, the Navy speaks that they need to clean up their mess on this island. They haven't done it in Ko'olawe, they haven't done it here. And in that treaty, it speaks that anyone that is of the ancestry of the Konahiki Kamehameha of 7713 Royal Patent, their lease can be revoked. And the reason why I'm bringing this up is I'm not trying to be hard. We want to work with you because why? You're on the land, and you have a lot of people here who are drinking this water. That's the reason. That is the whole purpose of me standing up for the people here. One, this is my alma mater, Honolulu. But another one is, I grew up in this area. I also grew up in Waianae. I have a lot of Waianae people who are afraid that their aquifers are being touched at the same time. But the point in case is that Alice Roberts and Colonel Missy Goy speak about this, where they need to work with us, the people. You have a 2-year plan with $2 billion, and there really is no plan. If you need help with that plan, go get the people that help clean up Koho'olawe. Because why? They understand. They do understand how to do these things. That's just the thing. You know, and another thing is, Kai, you Kanaka, you're supposed to understand these things. This is our people, our land, our water. Water is life. And this is how we're supposed to be working together. Please, do not take this for granted. $2 billion with no plan. Come on, guys. We gotta work together to make the plan so that, you know, this lady, she sits over here. She says she loves this island, but she gotta run away already. But you have people like me, people like the Kanaka sitting over here who live on this island, born and raised. We need to fix this. Not yesterday, now. Now is the time. So please, go talk to these people, because why? They want to work with the people. They want to work with people like me, people like Kaho'opi'i. That's our lines. This is the way we got to do things. Do not make a plan without strategically a plan in hand. That's all I'm saying. Aloha.
Mahalo. I'll just point out it's 8:17. And it's not for us. We could stay here all night, but it's for the staff of the Honolulu High School and OEV-TV, and we have promised them that we will conclude this by 9 p.m.
Yeah, my name is Antoinette Fernandez, and I'm running for Senator in District 24. Excuse me. I've written you several times, Kai, and I've never got an answer back, and I feel that there is a very big disconnect between you and the people, because it's like you're untouchable. We can't get a hold of you. We get these emails back that say, thank you for your concerns, but we never hear from you. Okay, and I have a question for you also. You said that you spoke to the president about the funding, and I'm wondering if he was coherent enough to make this decision about the funding, and why, if there's tornadoes or hurricanes or emergency situations, they send people in right away. But they have done nothing. These poor people cannot bathe, they cannot drink the water. And what about water catchment? It's been how many years that this has been going on? Why haven't they set up water catchment? They do it on the Big Island. It's all about the Benjamins. That's what it's about.
Hanale, can you please get her information? And I'd like to know when she worked with our office and when we did not correspond with her.
I personally did, just to clarify, I didn't personally speak to the president. I've spoken to the senior leaders in the military as well as others about this. I'm going to take your comment. First of all, I think the president is very coherent when he is trying to fund the remediation, defueling, and closure of Red Hill. So I have no doubt about his mental acuity in terms of doing the right thing.
Hi, my name is Susan Gorman Chang, and this question is for Representative Case. After the 2014 leak, and usually, up to a few months ago, you were very confident that the Navy could handle the Red Hill facility and could repair it, but obviously that's changed. So have they broken your trust? And how will you deal with the Navy in the future to make sure they come through with what they say they're going to do? Will you just take their word for it, or what will you do systemically to ensure that the Navy comes through with their promises?
Well, I think it's not accurate that I was confident in the Navy's ability to take care of Red Hill. This goes back to 2019. There was a process in place, the Administrative Order of Consent, that involved all of the Navy, the state of Hawaii, and the EPA, all working together to assure the safety of Red Hill. And I felt that that process was a reasonable process. And so I didn't second-guess the process, at least at the beginning. I did later on start to directly initiate separate funding out of University of Hawaii on another track to basically, try to work on the safety of Red Hill aside from the AOC process. So I think that describes my approach. Now, obviously, what happened, and it shook my confidence as well as everybody else's. So let's not be shy about this. Of course, I have a lack of confidence and trust in the Navy today. Of course, I don't give them the benefit of the doubt on this. Of course, I'm overseeing them. Of course, it's my job to do that. This has been my evolution on this, and that's where I am. And so I'm doing what I think I should be doing, which is providing as much oversight as I can in Congress, trying to get answers to the questions that the Navy still is not answering on occasions, including the health concerns that we've heard in spades tonight. And so, I hope that answers your question.
I see you guys get bottled water. I'll give you guys this water from the fountain up there. Take a sip, and then I'll talk. You guys notice that little tang in there? It's different from that bottled water you guys drink. But my name is Kahele Nakoa. I'm retired military. But first, I'm a Kanaka, right? All of you in the military who work on base, Ed, you said you were part of the subcommittee for the VA. Well, I hope you're going to push for treatment that these people deserve, because you heard their stories. The military could give two shits about their people. I'll tell you that right now. I know. And you guys hear it, right? So this is not even a joke anymore. It's like you guys are here just listening to the people. What are you guys doing? Because when Ukraine happened, $40 billion got pushed to Ukraine in months. We have to deal with this for decades. You heard Ernie. Ernie said the tanks have been leaking for decades. And yet nothing's being done. Even now, you guys are taking your time, trying to follow and check the boxes, but our people are suffering, and not just military. I live Honolulu Bay. There's a spring out there that's being affected. Water levels are low. And you guys don't care about that side, because your budget, all it says is, we're going to give the military this much money. We're going to give them billions, millions of dollars. What are you guys going to do for the people? We'll take your information down. Go talk to whatever his name is. That's what you guys are doing, right? Roger, he should be in jail for what he's doing to our people. All right, so my name is Kahele Nakoa. I'm running for City Council District 4. You guys want to know why? Because of actions like this. Us as Kanaka, we're fighting for the air we breathe. We're fighting for the water we drink. We're fighting for the land that our kupuna are in. And what are we doing? We're holding town halls so we can talk about it. What's being done? Nothing. You talk to the mayor, he doesn't know anything. Do you guys know about the iwi kupuna in Ainahena? Do you guys know about the iwi kupuna on Kauai with the development, with the bombing, with the blasting? No. Right? You guys, smoke and mirrors. Roger. So here we go. If you guys want change, don't talk to these guys. They're not going to do anything for you, because if they did, they would have pushed that budget that they pushed for Ukraine for us, for our people, for our generation, for the kids. What are they doing? Nothing. They're just using Hawaiian words to sound like they're for the people. Thank you.
Mahalo. Yes, I'll get your email. Nestor, can you get his email? We'll get in touch.
Maybe we all can have a meeting. All of us are on the email there. We'd probably love to have a group meeting with you. I would love that. Please be respectful. Just honest. Question and answer. Who says be respectful? It's our people that's being hurt.
Kana.
Our people that are suffering. We're not suffering. Don't tell me be respectful.
You know what? I want Tanaka over here too. My name is
So you
Wayne.
should be mad too.
Yeah,
I know who you are.
I am mad. Let me say something here. My name is Wayne Kahele. We talk about the Iwi over there up in Kuli'o'o and Aina. That's my ohana over there. Yeah, I'm an original. My father is an original from over that side. And I was there a couple years ago protecting that over there. But I'm over here to ask you guys to please show respect to our federal delegation here that has come from Washington to help and listen to the situation over here.
He lives here.
All of the things here. No, I tell you, because you know I got no.
He lives here. He don't go Washington.
Listen.
He stayed here doing
All I say is, let's work together. Is all I say. Let's work together. That's all I say. No. Let's work together.
That's what I do. Standing up for the people.
Okay, we cannot disrespect like that.
Just because you back guy up, no mean nothing.
Kana.
Yeah, just wait.
This is important. Alcohol doesn't do anything. But you came to me, bro. You came to me.
Hawaiians, let's take this outside because we have a few more people and we want to get everybody in, and it's 8:27. Can you go ahead with your question?
Hi, my name
Thank
is
you.
Anna. My name's Anna. So I just need to say that we cannot just take the Navy's word. They're going to drag their feet and slow roll the defueling. I think that's a fact that we can all agree on. What the SGH report proved to us was that the Navy has been lying for at least the past 8 years, probably the past 8 decades, about how safe the facility actually is. So when I hear 2023, 2024 for defueling, the only words I can think of is it's a mass atrocity, that's violence. When it comes to war making, things can move in a blink of an eye, but when it comes to protecting the people of Hawaii, this Aina and this Vai, it's gonna take 2 to 3 years. That's unacceptable. So we can't trust anything that they say. So Congressman Case, when I hear you say that your trust in them has deflated, I will be waiting to hear you be critical of them in hearings when they say it's going to take 2 to 3 years. I will be waiting to hear you say that you reject that plan. So I won't go into more detail about all the systemic factors because my friend Gina here has very thoughtfully laid that out. My question is regarding relocation, which both of you raised. So what are you going to do to ensure that the Navy isn't going to relocate the fuel to threaten another community in the Pacific, whether it's in Guahan, Okinawa, or elsewhere?
I'm really sorry. I just couldn't quite hear what you were saying, all of it. Could you possibly maybe come up here, take your mask off, and just repeat your specific question to me? Because I just didn't hear it.
Yeah. So what are you going to do to ensure that the Navy isn't going to relocate the fuel to threaten another community in the Pacific, whether it's Guahan, Okinawa, et cetera?
Oh, I see. Well, the Navy does have to relocate the fuel somewhere. There's a lot of fuel there. The Navy's general plans are to use most of it and store some of it. And the specific details of where it's going to do what, most of that the Navy keeps to itself. So no, I can't assure you that some of the Red Hill fuel will not go to this location or that location. They still have to satisfy their overall fuel storage capacity concerns. And so I guess I can't give you an absolute assurance that it's not going to be at this location or this other location. They have to take care of reserve fuel storage capacity.
And Anna, I couldn't agree with you more. This facility was not given the resources and attention that it required for decades. And it was because of incidents that happened over decades that we got to this point. And so, you know, we're faced with the reality that we have an independent assessment report that has at least 43 items that are critical items that must be done to the facility. The Navy and the Department of Health have to agree on what those items are and how long those are going to take. Then the Navy has to procure those contracts to make those necessary infrastructure upgrades. Then they can safely be in a position to defuel the facility. Not doing those infrastructure upgrades could make the situation worse. This is according to the independent assessment report. And so I think we need to see what that report says when it's published by the Navy at the end of this month, and then give the Navy and the Department of Health the time they need to come up with the appropriate course of action to move forward.
Aloha mai kako. My name is Pete, doctor. I live up the Ahapua'a, where my ohana and us, we've been just really stressed out since the 2014 leak and worried about impacts. I'm gonna have a few questions here, and you know, up until March 7th this year, the Navy was touting that they could drain a tank in 3 days, you know. Now that we're talking about a multi-year process, we can't wait 2 years. Can you? I mean, that's one of my questions. You know, one of the couple of things I don't understand and that I'm hearing tonight is a mention about safety. Of course, that's why we're here. We're worried about the safety of our water, right? And yet, when they talk, oh, it could be 2 years to get it ready and another year, it's like, what about our freaking safety here? Every day, the tanks are full, we're at risk. What about our safety? So I'm wondering how we're doing this balancing game between our interest, because even the Navy's own studies talk about everyday weight, the risk, a catastrophic leak every year is like 27% increase. Uncle Arnie, I've heard you touted those statistics that you didn't come up with.
It's from Navy reports. Okay. 27% chance of a leak between 1,000 to 30,000 gallons every year.
Thank you. And then the second, and I'll finish, is security that keeps coming up. What the hell? How is water not security? I don't know how this can be framed as security issues when, you know, what could be more critical to our security than water? Right? So you got a few questions there, Malo.
You know, I share your concerns as well. And when the House Armed Services Chairman's Mark came out, one of my first calls was to the Department of Health, because I wanted to know if they had concerns over this timeline. Because the reality is it's going to take from when they publish that report to 6 months for the Navy and the Department of Health to come to an agreement on how to move forward. They want to have that plan by November 1st of this year per the emergency order. Then once they agree to that plan, they need to contract those items, and those things take about another 6 months, and then it takes a year to have those things done. And one of the questions I had to the Department of Health was, you know, what is the level of risk we want to accept to the fuel sitting in those tanks for potentially 2 years, like you mentioned, versus commencing fuel? And they were very concerned with the items that are on the independent assessments report. To commence defueling before those were done could put us in a worse situation. And so, you know, take a look at page 304 of the independent assessment report. There's item number 27. It says, prior to defueling, to reduce the likelihood of sudden opening of a large valve and a resultant surge, you need to do this. We cannot start defueling until we do that. Unless the Department of Health deems that there is a greater risk to not doing this, one individual item, that we need to start defueling, and they have to come to an agreement on that. And I don't know if the Department of Health is going to take that level of risk. I mean, Ernie, do you have any thoughts on it?
I think the Congressman did make the invitation to the Health Department. Keith, I share your concern too. The longer the fuel is sitting there, you know, the risk of something happening it remains. But I also walked into the tunnel in the middle of December last year with the Congressman, and I saw what happened when the pressure surge happened in the pipeline. And right outside of tank number 20, a 5-foot section of pipe just kind of blew loose, you know, just broke loose. It was bolted in place, but that couldn't handle the 350 psi pounds per square inch pressure surge that was created when they tried to move the fuel out of that pipeline. So the other thing I'm concerned about, so I kind of balance, they got to do it quickly as possible, but they cannot do it when they're going to possibly have the pipe burst open again. And in each tank, they store up to 12.5 million gallons of fuel. And if the break in the pipe happens to be in a location where there's no valve, and for Board of Water Supply, we deal with main breaks, and we know what valves are, how important they are. If there's no valve that can shut off the fuel coming out of that tank, one tank could dump 12.5 million gallons of fuel in that lower tunnel, and fuel would run all the way down to Pearl Harbor. It's really scary. I saw a report dating back to the 90s by the Navy's own consultants. They indicated that the lower access tunnel, if there was a break on the pipe coming out of the wall from the bottom of the tank into that tunnel, it was a break right at that point, the lower access tunnel could fill up in 21 minutes. So we're dealing with a nightmare here. So it's one thing, they need to do it. They need to do it quickly, but they got to do it safely because they could inadvertently create a worse problem for all of us.
None of us want an Afghanistan-style pullout. We saw it happen, but we have an Afghanistan here. It shouldn't have been done, and it's been here too long.
Oh yeah. Years and years of warnings, their own reports, making it clear what the risk of the facility was, but the insistence that they wanted to keep the facility operating. So the only thing I can say, that, and Erwin and I have been at this for now over 8 years, Erwin Kawata, he's in the back there, is that at least right now, everybody's in agreement, got to defuel and got to shut down this facility permanently. So I would say, this is the most progress I've seen in the last 8 years, and thank you, Congressman, and our other congressional delegation for reaching that point of agreement, because we need to work on this together. We need to stay on the same position and keep the pressure on. Thank you. Mahalo.
Ernie mentions him and Erwin were working on this for 8 years. And when this situation happened at the end of November, we led a small tour into the Red Hill facility. And there is an upper adit that allows you to view the upper part of the tank, and there are 2 tanks that are empty, and they take you into I think it's tank 19, which is empty. But they very rarely take you into the lower access tunnel. And on this particular visit, we had an opportunity to go into the lower access tunnel. When I came out of the lower access tunnel, I called Ernie. And I was shocked to find out that Ernie had never been in to the lower access tunnel.
Actually, Congressman, I sorry for the miscommunication on that. Actually, I've been probably in the Red Hill facility, the lower tunnel and the upper tunnel, probably at least 10 times.
Oh, 10, okay.
Sorry.
I must have misunderstood you then.
But yeah, that was the first time I had been into the Red Hill facility for years. Because after we started to share our mana'o, to share our concerns about it and really push, we didn't really get a chance to go back in for a long time. So after the leak last year, that was very important because I saw the pipeline, the steel pipe that had that pressure surge. It's a 16-inch diameter welded steel pipe. It actually moved like 8 or 10 inches to one side because of the pressure and the force, and blew off a 5-foot section out of tank number 20, and also broke loose and caused a leak by tank 18. So thank you, Congressman. Sorry about that.
That's okay. We're clear now.
Okay.
Thank you. Go ahead with your question.
Good evening, everyone. My name is Rebecca Garrison. I'm a community organizer with Hawaii Peace and Justice and a member of the Oahu Water Protectors and the Coalition to Shut Down Red Hill. I'd first like to thank all the organizers for putting together this public forum. We know that this is such an important part of the process. I'd also like to say it was so nice to meet you, Congressman Kahele and Makua Access, when we went out with Auntie Lynette Guys, and we had a lovely conversation about Vieques, Puerto Rico. I bring this up because Congressman Case has been conspicuously silent on the discussion around land back and Makua, something that I know that is very important to you. This discussion around what's happening at Makua and the vast amount of contamination is directly correlated to the contamination at Kapukaki, also known as Red Hill, and the contamination that will take place during RIMPAC this summer. We know from our friend Gina that this is a systemic issue. We know from everyone here that the public does not trust the military. We have zero trust in the military. And my question is, for the record, because this has been coming out from a lot of our discussions around what's happening at Kapukaki and what will happen during RIMPAC is, will the fuel up at Red Hill be used during RIMPAC? We want to know on record that it will in fact not be used during RIMPAC.
No.
Thank you.
Mahalo. Thank you for your question.
Hi, my name is Catherine, and like a lot of the women who've spoken before today, I'm a military spouse. My family and I have lived on Joint Base Pearl Harbor, Hickam, the last 3 years. Last winter, we all had symptoms of the jet fuel, and we naively believed that those symptoms would just pass away and go on, and we would live our life. I just want to be another voice. I've actually not met these women that you've already heard tonight. This was not a concerted effort to all gang up and group up and come to speak to you. I speak up because in April, I developed finger tremor. In early May, we had gray, unusually smelling water come out of our sink. I emailed the Navy, I emailed Department of Health. It took 5 weeks to send a team to see the water. They then informed me that the time now that I've already developed some type of tremors, I'm not quite sure, I don't have neurology appointments yet. The shakes that I have, the tremors, the swaying, they have diagnosed, I've now got nystagmus, which is vibrating eyes. Who'd have thought? I was an ex-collegiate swimmer. I used to paddleboard 2 to 3 hours off Waimea Bay, one of the most beautiful spots in the world to me. I can hardly balance to stand and walk. So these symptoms that all the families come and speak about, they're not just potential symptoms. They're occurring, and we're waiting to have answers and to have help. So one thing I just want to reiterate to you is these are the symptoms that if the urgency to shut Red Hill down and defuel it quickly is not balanced, the symptoms that you've heard tonight and seen in all of us, these are the symptoms that when I first heard about the leak, I said to my dear friend who is from here, I said, get involved. This will be your children next. I don't want to see this beautiful island contaminated like we've had done to us. So first of all, just please balance the urgency to defuel this contamination that is affecting us. And second of all, prior to tonight, what did you think were the medical needs still within the military and civilian communities living on the base? Were you aware of any of them? My fear is that they've been covered up and they've been quieted down and brushed away. So as you begin looking at that $1 billion you spoke of to help, and it said the health of DOD families, please keep in mind that we would like to know that we could get funding to help put filters on, provide us bottled water. We are no longer provided water. So we now buy that water ourselves, each family in the military who doesn't trust, who has symptoms like I did, we now spend our money to go and purchase water. In the same month that we were informed that our rent's going up $300 a month. So the civilian families, and that's who I speak for here as well that live on the military bases, not only is it the civilian families affected, it's the military families. So the medical care still is an issue to me, and also getting our voices heard and how that $1 billion could help us. Because I do, like all these other spouses said, we speak for the hundreds and thousands who were affected. And these aren't just potential symptoms that come down the road. So thank you.
Thank you for sharing that. Like Congressman Case said, clearly the medical issues and long-term medical care effects are only beginning. You know, this is something that's personal for me. My dad was a United States Marine at Camp Lejeune in 1960. And he got blood cancer at 73, one of the qualifying conditions between like 1950 and 1980 for Camp Lejeune, a $2 billion settlement. And my dad and my mother, who's a widow, got nothing. So this is something that is personal to me and for our military members like myself and our dependents who document this and get line of duties. This will carry into our time as veterans with the VA, and I would imagine that there will be major class action lawsuits against the United States military by civilians and by military dependents. And so I will take your concerns and all the other service members and wives back to Washington, D.C. with me when we look at this provision on Wednesday.
Aloha. I'm
Hi, Melody.
Melody Aduha, co-chair, Environmental Caucus of the Democratic Party. Aloha. I know I've spoken to both of you as well as Erwin Kawata up there several times on this. But several concerns. RIMPAC, that's 25,000 personnel coming in, 26 countries. Next week, Wednesday, they're going to start and won't end until August 5th. Now, in 2018, they did receive fuel from Red Hill. 2020, they also received fuel from Red Hill. I've talked to or asked during an FTAC meeting from Captain Gordy Meyer how much fuel is actually used in RIMPAC from Red Hill. And he said, I will get you that information at the next FTAC meeting. The following FTAC meeting, I asked it again. The moderator, Peter, said, oh, it's classified. So I didn't get any answer. I just wanted to make a point that we have in 2018 and 2020 poured a lot of fuel for RIMPAC. And what happened to our leaky pipes then? What happened to the flow of oil that must have spilled then? Okay, that's one thing. The other thing, Congressman, I talked to you, thank you. I talked to you about this before, and by the way, those of you who do want to talk to our public officials, go to the neighborhood board. There's a time called community concerns, and you can talk to them, and they're always available. I know Kai's always available. Board of Water Supply is always sending their own representative as well. Okay, and I've addressed this with you before regarding the testing, regarding the NGPC testing, Department of Health. When they do those flushing into Halava Stream, they're supposed to test for, it looks like 10. I know Ernie said 12, but I believe I saw 10. Excuse me.
You might be right. I'm getting a little old and forgetful.
No, no, you're not. You're perfect. Well, you know what I mean. We're not all perfect, but you do very well. Okay, I'm not sure why it's not, excuse me, why it's not coming up here. Give me a minute. Give me a minute.
Since Melody's looking for her notes, it's 8:48, and we will stop at 9 o'clock, so we have 12 more minutes.
Thank you. Really quick. Okay, so we know for sure, because you've confirmed it, Congressman, TPHG and TPHD is being tested by the Navy. However, according to the permit, there's benzene, toluene, xylene, ethybenzene, lead, organic lead, pH, and whole effluent toxicity. That is not being tested. And there is no oversight by Department of Health because obviously their labs are inefficient. We don't have a lab that is EPA certified. So even when the Navy tests it according to this permit, they cannot test it on real time for efficiency. It has to go to the continent and then come back, and there's that turnaround time, I guess somewhere it's around 5 days or so. Please make sure that we have some real-time testing at 5 million gallons a day going into Halava Stream. That's pretty dangerous, toxic, and that's, yeah, exactly. And then I remember Erwin Kawata mentioning as a metaphor, when you flush, it's still, the petroleum is still going to be stuck to the walls of the pipes. It doesn't just flush away. So in that sense, it's still affecting all these people that are on the line, unless there's some other way of detergent or what have you that has to take place. And finally, I want to make a comment because I'm really shocked when I asked Ernie about this. So since the November release of 19,000 gallons and the Navy was skimming the Red Hill well, and they stopped in February, and the amount that was accumulated or I guess recovered was only 100 gallons. Now that's absurd. Please clarify their efficiency in trying to clean this mess up. Thank you.
I think it, and that's, Melody, that's the information we had at the time. I don't think we have any more recent information, but it shows you how difficult it is to remove fuel from the rocks and from the aquifer itself, because the volume of water they're flushing and how much they actually recovered or removed, that's kind of the unknown right now. How efficient is it? Mahalo.
Thank you, Melody.
Aloha, my name is Sean Ritchie. First and foremost, thank you all for putting on this forum. Thank you for my alumni, Honolulu High School, for putting this on. And to all of the people who've come and poured in their attention, their time, their efforts for years and years. I am a first generation Kama'aina. I am a veteran, and my career has been in procurement, a word that's been thrown around a lot tonight. And I'd like to make 3 statements, or 3 points. The first is that I worked for the legislative session in 2015. I heard the people pour out after the 2014 leaks. I thought we came together as people to get it done for the people. I thought that there was a task force in place that was going to get done. I've heard from Ernie that produced nothing, and it's not okay. And so my first point is anybody who stood by from the 2015 to 2019, we got to vote them out. They had their chance. Sorry, get them out. The second point is one of the biggest points in government, right? I see $2.2 billion that's going to be over the next, or for 2-year span. And in that 2-year span, they're guaranteeing that nothing's going to get done. They highlighted a bunch of things that need to happen in order to start spending that money, and it might not happen, but that money is still going to be spent. And the point is, you cannot ask the agency that caused the problem to fix it. You cannot allow the bureaucracy, the slow turning wheels of the federal government to be the tip of the spear. We just cannot. So I ask our congresspeople to please give $1 billion to this community. Give us some oversight and $1 billion and watch how fast we fix this. Because again, I was in procurement and I know the waterfall approach that they're gonna do. And to Ernie's point, this is a moving target. So they're going to start spending this money, they're going to start this procurement, and it's going to grow and it's never going to stop. And so it needs to be given back to the community. And the third point, and I've gotten this from listening to everybody here today, is that trust is gone. And so I would like our representatives to put an initiative forward that any land use from the federal government requires Kanaka oversight, requires oversight from our Native communities to make sure that the resources are being spent and the resources are being respectful to the land so that we do not get into this point again. Thank you very much.
Mahalo, Sean.
Thank you. Hi, my name is Angelica Burgermeister, and I just wanted to ask about if the tanks are not being used right now to supply the military with any fuel, where does the military currently get its fuel from that's being used to run the ships and the airplanes? Is there a tanker or something somewhere where they keep the fuel outside of Hawaii, or where's that fuel coming from? Because, I mean, they have to use fuel, right? And the other thing is, you mentioned that at the very beginning of the meeting, you had said that there is this thing where they have to find an alternative place where they can put the fuel, which right now they're not using our current place. So now for the last however many months, there is an alternative already somewhere, but they still reserve the right that they possibly could continue to use the facility once it's fixed and basically ready to go to defuel. And you know what really is the most scary thing, the most frightening thing, that what you said, Mr. Lau, 180,000 gallons have been, basically lost. That's number one. But then we have 200 repairs that must be done. And if people would not have gotten sick last year, because that's the real tragedy, that people got sick, they would still continue to fuel and defuel and fuel and defuel with absolutely no respect for the land and for the people that live here. And that's the thing. When you showed that thing, how much water does the Navy need? That basically shows you that there is no respect for the people that live on this island, for the people, for the island itself. You know, this is a precious island. We are all here, we're all guests. This is not our place to destroy. We have no right to do that. And the military shouldn't have the right either. Because you and I, when we pollute the ground, and we create some kind of oil spill somewhere, we will be held accountable. The military has gotten away with it for 80 years. And it is time to put a stop on this. And like that one woman said before, they have done it hundreds of times all over the world. We all, to a certain degree, understand that we need the military. I get that. But there got to be some kind of accountability. And you know what? The only reason why you guys reacted is because of people getting sick. The only one that actually did anything over the last few years was Mr. Lau. He's the only one that spoke up. And I mean, kudos to you. You're a hero. You are our hero because you have a sense of community and a care for the planet, because it's all precious. Because how much money, you cannot put a price tag on water. You can't. You cannot put a price tag on it, because even if you just put one drop of oil in one glass of water, I can assure you, nobody wants to drink it. Thank you.
Thank you. I wanted to answer your question. There is 6 above-ground tanks at Pearl Harbor that hold 36 million gallons of fuel. There are 4 above-ground tanks at Hickam that hold 14 million gallons of fuel. And there is capacity at Campbell Industrial Park that holds fuel. So that's where the fuel's coming from right now. You're welcome. All right, it is 8:58. We have the last 2 people who are gonna ask the question.
Good evening, my name is Chris M. Sablon. I live in town, graduated McKinley, so thank you very much for hosting us, Mauna Loa. My theme of this question is why we can't have nice things. It's really not in your kuleanas, but I'm a retired U.S. Army Reserve member, been here since 1970, born on Guam. The military is moving a lot of stuff that they had over here and focusing on Guam. They got a contract in Guam to build. So in regards to water use and all that kind of stuff, my question is not really in your kuleanas, but what on the punitive side do you see can happen for the military that is not treating this sovereign government correctly? And you know about that stuff. Because I see water still being used on military golf courses and all that kind of good stuff. So to me, the resource is not being utilized well. So why we can't have nice things is like, I wish there was a way to temper the military use of water, and it's not in your kuleanas. You guys are required to get monies, as you would explain. That's what you guys do for us here, but kind of like bigger than a slap on the wrist, like your water should be restricted because you as caretakers have not taken care of the water. So the fact that they have golf courses that are still being irrigated and all that other stuff. And I know all about morale and welfare facilities throughout the state in general, because I've been exposed to it for the past 25 plus years in the reserves here local. And it's just something I can follow up with an email for the most part, but just on a punitive side. And I feel bad for the commander on that Red Hill, the Navy guy that got relieved for lack of confidence, because this was not his problem that he created, it was something that he inherited. So just on the punitive side, why we can't have nice things, the military should pay for their ignorance and abuse.
Aloha no, o vau o nani, no wai anai mai au. First, mahalo nui loa, no ke ia hana, no ke ia ho'ike ana, I ko hana nui, ko hana ko'i loa, no kākou ka Hawaii e kai. Ai, Anakala Ernie, mahalo for your work that you've been doing all these years. 2 years, that's too long, way too long. I kāko'o everything that Sean said. Why are you not looking to our community? Yeah, I really wanted to talk to Mr. Case here, because when you guys made that presentation a while ago, the first initial bill to bring this to the attention, he mentioned that we, the people of Hawaii, have a kuleana to the military. Ole loa. I have no kuleana to the military at all. They have a kuleana to understand what that word means and to understand how to hold that responsibility. I say to you, Kai, as Kanaka Oiwi, you have the biggest kuleana right now to understand our true history. The military has done this, heva, all over. Not here anymore. If you take this office, this step to governor, you will have the power to remove this heva. Get this military out. I'm not saying this because I'm not for the military, I'm not for America. I'm pro-Hawaii. Oh yeah, no. You have a big kuleana kai to follow through with what you say you're going to do. Walk the walk, not just talk the talk. And I say this for this vai. I say this for Makua. You also said in your presentation for Makua, the land going back to the people. And then you said the land going back to the state. Ole, that's not where it belongs. It belongs back to our Kanaka Oiwi of this aina. Me ke aloha. Ya oi, e awamo ko kuleana. Oia no. Mahalo.
Okay, this is our last question or comment for the night.
Mai, elik me ke ia wahine mapopo vai no ko mako ka koa pau ka manao no o ko. Aloha, o wau o Kaimo, I am Kaimo, no ho wau I iuka nei o ke ia ahupua'a, moana lua nei. I mahalo ya this team right here, but collectively what I heard tonight and before, you know. My son is an engineer. He also went into, on behalf, and did water quality checks at different sites on this island and other islands. I didn't have to ask him. I looked at his face. Pehea kawai. You just look at his face. Kaumaha no. Ka'aina. Kawai. Kaumaha loa no. Kuleana. You know kuleana. You have kuleana. We all know we all have kuleana. So I truly hope that your presentation in your amendments, Mr. Kahele, that you go and take our voice back to Washington and you speak meka leo nui. Leo nui. I want to see you on that TV, meka leo nui, when you get on that floor and advocate for us to put those mana'o that you truly believe that is going to be pono for this island, for the pai aina, for everything that we do.
I don't want us to leave because you're predicting that there could be a flush from those tanks and wash down. I can only imagine that there's going to be an emergency evacuation for all of us here. E kala mai, ne'e. No, that's not going to happen. So you know your kuleana, you know how to change to make it correct. You're the engineer, my son's the engineer. You all engineers know what to do. So you go back and you speak with the leo nui of what you heard tonight and before. And when you go on Wednesday, I want to see you up there to advocate, truly advocate, because this is a state of emergency right now. I don't want to see that fuel flushing down in these streams over here. It is of extreme importance, and you tell them in Washington. I want to hear it when you go back in the next few days. Ole, heaven no, but we all gonna, it's a kako thing, from the president to your colleagues to all the ohana here, because we cannot have ma'i going on over here at the expense of whatever. So please go and make a leo nui and ha'i mai I ko mako mana'o pono, mana'o vai I kela ma Washington nei. Mahalo nui.
Mahalo. I want to thank Congressman Case, who is already probably on his airplane headed to Washington. My flight takes off in 1 hour and 4 minutes. So I hope I can get to Delta Airlines and get on that plane, otherwise I'm going to have problems. But mahalo Congressman Case and his staff. I want to mahalo my staff for putting this presentation together and for facilitating this tonight. Mahalo to Ernie and the Board of Water Supply, Erwin up there, mahalo. Thank you, Senator Favela, for being here all night. Want to mahalo our Hawaii State Sheriffs for coming tonight and providing us some oversight. Want to mahalo OEV TV for putting this on and live streaming this. Want to mahalo Sophie Koch from the Star Advertiser and the Hawaii News Now for carrying this earlier. And if I left anyone out, e kala mai ia'u, but I hope all of you have a wonderful evening. Thank you so much for coming tonight, for expressing your manao. We will take everything we heard back to Washington, D.C. and the United States Navy, and I promise you, ola ika vai, and we will defuel, decommission, and shut down the Red Hill bulk fuel storage facility. You have our word for that. So mahalo nui loa. Final words, Ernie? Ernie, final words?
Thank you, everybody, for coming out tonight, and
aloha, drive safely, and mahalo.
thank you, everybody. Mahalo.